Chapter 1617. In the celestial region, Ji Ming returned from the Taichu ancient battlefield and brought back the truth of the Taichu ancient world. Reappearing in the mortal world, Ning Chen's body was covered in thick frost. In front of the immortal palace, the three strongest saints of the mortal world gathered to discuss the future of the mortal world. Now, if you were to fight with an eighth heaven god, what are your chances of winning? The female saint asked seriously. Less than 10%. Ning Chen answered honestly, as long as we can't completely leave the great world, we can't fight against the laws of time. What's more troublesome is that we don't know how to kill that god. At the side, Fan Lingyue looked at the horizon and said, what kind of existence is a chaos god fiend? Now that there are no chaos god fiends in this world, this is the most difficult thing. Ning Chen answered, saints of the Great Path have weaknesses. Destroying the Great Path Bridge can kill them, but we know nothing about the weakness of a chaos god fiend. If there's a chance, go to the eighth heaven again, Fan Lingyue said calmly. Our combat strength is not enough. Ning Chen said seriously, the celestial region is our last trump card and can't be used easily. To fight against the chaos god fiend of the eighth heaven, we can't guarantee our safety with our current combat strength. Go and find Man, the female saint said softly. Now, Man is also a great path realm expert and can be of help. Hearing this, Ning Chen fell silent. After a long time, he shook his head lightly and said, let her be. The female saint sighed and said nothing more. At the side, Fan Lingyue changed the topic and said calmly, what about the Netherlord? Is he still unable to wake up? Ning Chen nodded and said, he was injured and his injuries are too serious. I'm afraid that even the great path rule in his body is affected. It will be difficult for him to wake up in a short time. What a pity. She should have been our best helper. Fan Lingyue said lightly and said, Ji Ming, you just came back. Rest first. There's no rush to go to the eighth heaven. While you still have time, spend more time with Gue Gue. The female saint reminded. I understand. Ning Chen nodded and replied. Lingyue, let's go. The female saint said. Fan Lingyue nodded and the two left together. Beside Ning Chen, Gue Gue saw the two ants left. She immediately raised her little head and reached for a hug. Daddy, hug me. All right. Ning Chen picked up Gue Gue and said gently, Gue Gue, have you been good these days? Gue Gue is the best. Gue Gue raised her little head and said in a childish voice. Ning Chen smiled and said, your big sister brought you to the human world to play? Gue Gue nodded vigorously and said, the human world is so fun. Do you want to go there again? Ning Chen asked softly. Yes, Gue Gue replied. Let's go then. Ning Chen smiled and said. Phoenix flames rose around him. In the next moment, above the celestial realm, a phoenix cried out and flew towards the mortal realm. Not long after Ji Ming and Gue Gue left the immortal region, purple light soared into the sky in a small world. The sky was filled with arrow shadows, and their power was earth-shattering. Success! I've finally succeeded! Luo Xing rushed out from the small world and laughed heartily. In the void, all the laws of heaven and earth rumbled and shook. A new bridge of the great path appeared. The powerful pressure shocked all the worlds. Ning Chen, who had left the celestial realm, sensed something. He turned around and looked into the distance, his eyes narrowing. This kid was really fast. Sometimes, talent really couldn't be envied. Another one. In the dark world, the Lord of Darkness opened his eyes and said with a heavy expression. The human world's sovereigns have stepped into the saint realm one after another. The dusk of the saints. My previous premonition is finally coming true, Lord Mo said in a serious voice. We can't sit still and wait for death. Now that the celestial realm's sovereign has left the celestial realm, it's the best time for us to make a move, Lord of Darkness said in a deep voice. What do you mean? Lord Mo looked at the human man who had just entered the saint realm in the distance and said, kill the human saint. That's right. Lord of Darkness said calmly, the human saints are equivalent to the celestial realm's right-hand men. As long as these people are eliminated, no matter how strong the celestial realm's sovereign is, He won't be able to do anything alone. Lord Mo was silent. After a moment, he nodded and said, "That makes sense. Let's go." Lord of Darkness got up and walked towards the sky. In the distance, in the small world, arrow light soared into the sky. Luo Xing became a saint, attracting the attention of all parties. At this moment, in the human world, Ning Chen walked over with Gue Gue and rushed straight to the inner realm. In the inner realm, as soon as Ning Chen arrived, in the 5 regions, the human world's powerhouses sensed his arrival and their expressions changed. The foreign pressure was no longer like pressure. It was as if the sky was pressing down, so heavy that it was difficult to breathe. However, only the most powerful martial artists in the human world could feel the terrifying pressure. Ordinary people still couldn't sense anything. Ning Chen held Gui Gui's hand and walked on the land of the inner realm. Looking at the changes in the inner realm, his eyes flashed with light. He was finally back. "Daddy, where is this?" Gui Gui asked in a childish voice. "This is Daddy's hometown." Ning Chen said softly, "It's also Gui Gui's hometown." When Gui Gui heard this, she nodded as if she understood, and said, "Then are we going to live here in the future?" "Yes." Ning Chen replied softly, "We will stay for some time." 3 months later, in the Eastern Divine Prefecture, the old site of Desolate City, Ning Chen and Gui Gui arrived and stopped. In the past, Desolate City was the old site of the legendary battle with the Nether King. After tens of thousands of years, it was difficult to see Desolate City's former appearance. Ning Chen raised his hand, and sword intent spread throughout the Imperial City. In an instant, the silent sword intent in Desolate City automatically awakened and fought against the sword intent that filled the sky. "Senior Mubai, I'm back," Ning Chen said softly. He waved his right hand and dispersed the sword intent that filled the sky. Then, in Desolate City, the sword intent quieted down again and returned to normal. After becoming a saint, Ning Chen discovered that even saints of the Great Path couldn't reverse life and death. Those who had passed away could never come back. The reincarnation of the heavenly Tao was difficult for humans to go against. Even saints had a time when they ran out of power. In Desolate City, Ning Chen stood quietly for a moment and then walked toward the imperial city of the Great Xia. The Great Xia was an immortal dynasty that had been passed down for countless years. It was known as the most terrifying existence in the Divine Prefecture. Generation after generation of Marquis protected the peace of the dynasty. Even if the dynasty was in turmoil, the inheritance of the Marquis had never been cut off. The spirit of the Marquis of the Great Xia was passed down from generation to generation. Every Marquis inherited the glory of history and was willing to sacrifice everything for the dynasty. Ning Chen came with Gui Gui and walked through the territory of the Great Xia, witnessing the changes of the dynasty. The dynasty that had been protected with blood in the past had gone through the changes of time. Not much of its shadow could be seen. Outside the imperial city, in a maple forest, a large tomb stood. It seemed to be protected by a mysterious power. After tens of thousands of years, there were still not many changes within 10 miles. In front of the tomb, Ning Chen stopped and looked at the tomb in front of him. He said softly, "Queen, I'm back." Chapter 16-18. In the human realm, in the Great Xia dynasty, knowing destiny returned and brought Gige to sweep his grandson's grave. After tens of thousands of years, everything had changed. Only the area within a 10-mile radius did not change at all. The 10-mile maple forest was red like fire. In front of the tomb, knowing destiny knelt down and kowtowed silently. On the side, Gui Gui felt the change in her father and also knelt down. Gui Gui was very smart and obedient. She knelt there quietly and did not disturb her father. "Empress, I'm back." While speaking, Ning Chen looked at the child beside him and said, "This is Gige, my child." In front of the tomb, maple leaves fell and landed on the tombstone. It was so red. "Gugui, kowtow 4 times to Empress." Ning Chen said softly. Hearing this, Gui Gui kowtowed 4 times obediently. Her small body looked so cute. In the sky, the sun was moving west. It was already late. Ning Chen brought Gui Gui to the maple forest and said, "Gui, can we live here?" Gugue replied obediently. Then let's build a small wooden house here. Ningchen smiled. Gugue will help Daddy. Gugue nodded. Ningchen walked to a maple tree, formed a sword with his finger, and cut down the maple tree. The fallen maple tree scared the birds and beasts away. Using his finger as a sword, Ningchen cut off the branches of the maple tree bit by bit. Gugue helped from the side and carried away all the branches that were cut off. The father and son worked together. Under the setting sun, they quickly built a simple wooden house. Not long after, the sun set and the sky darkened. Ningchen squatted down and wiped the dust on Guegue's face. With a gentle expression, he said, "Hey, are you tired?" "Not tired," Guegue replied in a childish voice. "Will Daddy get you something to eat?" Ningchen smiled. Guegue nodded vigorously. "Guegue will wait for Daddy here. Don't run around." Ningchen looked at the surrounding maple forest and instructed. Guegue replied obediently. Ningchen walked into the maple forest to find food for Gue. Not long after, Ningchen came back with a wild rabbit. He started a bonfire in front of the wooden house and started to roast it seriously. Guegue sat in front of the bonfire and looked at the roasted wild rabbit. She was so hungry that her saliva almost dripped out. About an hour later, the hare was roasted. Ningchen tore off a leg of the hare and handed it to Guegue beside him. "Thank you, father," Guegue said in a childish voice. Her two white and tender little hands hugged the hare and began to eat. Ningchen sat to the side and watched Guegue wolfing down the food. He couldn't help but laugh. The way this child ate was so similar to him. Not long after, Guegue ate 2 rabbit legs and fell asleep in her father's arms contentedly. Ningchen gently patted Guegue's back so that she could sleep more comfortably. In the sky, the stars dotted the sky. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. For thousands of years, even though time had passed, the sky remained unchanged. Ningchen shifted his gaze and looked at the child in his arms. Light flashed across his eyes. Now that he had a child of his own, he had to take up his responsibilities and create a real peaceful world for Guegue and them. At this moment, the sound of the great Tao sounded in the void. Dots of starlight gathered and a graceful and elegant figure walked out. "Welcome back, Marquis," the woman in the void said. Seeing the person, Ningchen stood up and bowed politely. "Pavilion Master, how have you been?" The Heavenly Music Pavilion Master nodded slightly. Looking at the child beside him, she asked, "Is this your child?" Ningchen nodded and said truthfully, "His name is Guegue. Amazing Spirit Chi. In the future, his achievements will not be below yours." The Heavenly Music Pavilion Master looked at Guegue and praised. "As long as he can live peacefully, I will be satisfied." Ningchen said softly, "Pavilion Master, perhaps in the near future, there will be a great battle in the sky. If we win, there will be no more calamity in the human world. If we lose..." At this point, Ningchen fell silent and didn't continue speaking. "Whether you win or lose, just do your best." The Heavenly Music Pavilion Master said calmly, "You have done too much for the human world. It's time to end it." Ningchen looked at the vast land of the Divine Prefecture and said, "Pavilion Master, thanks to you protecting the inner realm all these years, the 5 regions have been peaceful until now." "It's what I should do," the Heavenly Music Pavilion Master replied. Under the starry sky, Ningchen and the Heavenly Music Pavilion Master talked for a long time. Perhaps, this was the last time they would see each other. At the middle of the moon, the Heavenly Music Pavilion Master left. Ningchen carried Guegue back to the wooden house and covered her with clothes. Guegue fell asleep sweetly, murmuring from time to time. No one knew what she was dreaming of. Ningchen walked out of the wooden house and looked at the tomb in front of him. A smile appeared on his face. The quiet night gradually passed. At dawn, Guegue woke up. She rubbed her eyes and called out, "Daddy? You're awake?" In front of the wooden house, Ningchen turned around and looked at Guegue. He smiled and said, "Daddy is going to sweep the Empress tomb today. Guegue, do you want to help?" Guegue nodded. Ningchen reached out and took Guegue's little hand. They walked toward the tomb in front of them. In front of the tomb, Ning Chen and Gui Gui cleaned the dust and leaves of Zhang Xuan's tomb. While sweeping the tomb, Ning Chen told Gui Gui every detail of the past. Gui Gui was still very young. She understood some things and some things she didn't understand. However, she still listened with great interest. The Empress is a very, very good person. Gui Gui finally judged. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and smiled. Without the Empress, Daddy wouldn't be here today. In Daddy's heart, the Empress is no different from Daddy's mother. Gui Gui also has a mother. It's just that she's sick. Speaking of this, Gui Gui's mood was a little low. She seemed to miss her mother. Ning Chen reached out and rubbed Gui Gui's hair. He said gently, Gui Gui needs to learn to wait. When mother recovers, she'll play with Gui Gui. Zhang Xuan's tomb wasn't big. At noon, the father and son cleaned the tomb, sweeping away all the dust and weeds. Gui Gui's face was full of sweat. Her little face was black and red. She was very cute. Ning Chen reached out and wiped the sweat and dirt off Gui Gui. He said softly, rest for a while. Gui Gui nodded and sat down next to her father. The simple and peaceful days were so fulfilling. There were no swords, no deception, only a return to ordinary peace. At this moment, the prosperity of the human world and the battles of the heaven realm had nothing to do with knowing destiny. Every day, Ning Chen just accompanied Gui Gui and Zhang Sun, living the most ordinary days. And not far from the imperial city of Xia Kingdom, the marquises of Xia Kingdom looked to the north. Their expressions were solemn. What kind of existence was that person? Only the most powerful warriors could feel the indescribable aura in the 10-mile maple forest. It had already surpassed the limits of warriors. People couldn't even think of attacking. Waiting like this isn't a solution. I'll pay a visit in person. In the imperial city, the most powerful of the 7 marquises, Marquis Kaixin, said calmly. Chapter 1619. Outside the imperial city, in the 10-mile maple forest, Jiming brought Gui Gui to live a normal life. In the imperial city, the 7 marquises of the Grand Xia dynasty looked in the direction of the 10-mile maple forest with solemn expressions. The Grand Xia dynasty had been peaceful for many years and did not allow anyone to break this peace. However, the aura of the person in the 10-mile maple forest was too shocking. The current Marquis Triumphant Xian personally left the imperial city and went to the 10-mile maple forest. The other 6 marquises stood quietly in the imperial city, waiting for news from Marquis Triumphant Xian. In the 10-mile maple forest, Ning Chen brought Gui Gui to play. The sky was filled with red maple leaves, dyeing the world red. Outside the maple forest, Marquis Triumphant Xian walked over, his black armor clanging. The title of Marquis was passed down from generation to generation. It symbolized the supreme glory of the Grand Xia. To protect the safety of the Grand Xia, generation after generation of marquises fought bloody battles, never fearing any danger. In the maple forest, Ning Chen felt the aura of the newcomer. He patted his little head and smiled. There's a guest. Go play by yourself. Yes, father. Gui Gui replied in a childish voice and ran to the side to play. At this time, the current Marquis Triumphant Xian came to the maple forest. Seeing the white-haired young man in front of him, his expression froze. The two of them looked at each other. One was as calm as water, the other was abnormally alert. However, neither of them spoke. After a long time, Ning Chen smiled and said, "You should call me senior." Hearing this, Marquis Triumphant Xian was startled. He quickly recovered and bowed respectfully. "Senior." Marquis Triumphant Xian? Ning Chen looked at the armor on the former and asked. Marquis Triumphant Xian said seriously. Ning Chen looked in the direction of the imperial city and said softly, "You guys are not bad." He thought that after so many years, the Grand Xia dynasty had ceased to exist. He did not expect that the Grand Xia dynasty, which was on the verge of collapse, could be passed down to this day. Marquis Triumphant Xian looked at the white-haired man in front of him and felt that he was more and more familiar. Why did he feel that he had seen this person somewhere before? Suddenly, Marquis Triumphant Xian's expression, his face was filled with disbelief. The legendary guardian of the Grand Xia dynasty, Marquis Jiming. In the imperial land of the divine continent, Jiming Marquis and his group risked their lives to go against the heavens and saved the divine land of the divine lands. This legend, everyone. The man in front of him was too similar to the statue in front of the palace. Kaishian greets Senior Jiming Marquis. Marquis triumphant returned to his senses and respectfully bowed. His heart was filled with turbulent waves. Hearing these three familiar words, Ning Chen's face revealed a look of reminiscence. You're all very good. Ning Chen collected his thoughts and sighed. Protect the glory of the Marquis and most importantly, protect this pure land. Marquis triumphant respectfully replied. Go back. If there's anything, you can come find me anytime, Ning Chen said with a calm expression. Triumphant Return will take his leave. The victorious Return Marquis saluted, then turned around and left. After Marquis Triumphant Return left, Ning Chen walked over to Gui Gui, who was playing with her. He squatted down and whispered, Gui Gui, what are you doing? Painting. Gui Gui held a small branch in her hand and drew on the ground. What are you drawing? Ning Chen asked curiously. No. Gui Gui said in a childish voice. Ning Chen squatted at the side and patiently watched Ghost drawing without disturbing him. After drawing for a long time, Gui Gui drew a strange and nondescript nyonyo, which looked a bit ridiculous. Father, I'm done. Gui Gui raised her head and said with an expectant look. Not bad. Ning Chen chuckled and said, but it can be better. After he finished speaking, Ning Chen picked up a branch from beside him and added some touches to Gui Gui's David. Gui Gui looked at her father's drawing of nyonyo. Her beautiful big eyes were wide open and very bright. Gui Gui, look at it. After drawing, Ning Chen looked at the little guy beside him and asked softly. Yes, father is really amazing. Gui Gui said with a look of admiration. Ning Chen smiled and said, Gui Gui is also very good and will become better and better in the future. Being exaggerated by her father, Gui Gui's little face smiled like a blooming flower. She was very happy in her heart. The relationship between father and son was so warm. Gui Gui stepped forward and hugged her father, acting like a spoiled child. Father, I want to eat tanghulu. Okay, father will take you to buy it. Ning Chen got up and stretched out Gui Gui's little hand, saying, Great Xia Imperial City, Marquis Triumphant Returns residence. The 7 marquises of Great Xia gathered. When they heard the identity of the young man in 10-Mile Maple Forest, they were shocked. The legendary guardian of Great Xia dynasty, Marquis Jiming? Marquis Jiming is actually still alive. The current Marquis Wangchuan said with a shocked expression. It can't be wrong, that senior looks exactly the same as the statue, and he didn't lie. Marquis Triumphant Return said. To be able to live to this era, how strong is that senior? Marquis Wangchuan said seriously. Immeasurable. Marquis Triumphant Return replied. In front of him, I can't even think of attacking. It must be Marquis Jiming. At this time, among the 7 marquises, a woman said, 10-Mile Maple Forest is where our dynasty's Empress Zhang's son is buried. Legend has it that Empress Zhang's son and Marquis Jiming were like mother and son. 10-Mile Maple Forest has never withered because of the protection of Marquis Jiming's power. Blood-clad Marquis's words make sense. Marquis Wangchuan nodded. When that senior appeared, he immediately returned to 10-Mile Maple Forest. There is no doubt that he is Marquis Jiming. That senior is coming. The woman, who was also the current Marquis Bloodclad, looked outside the imperial city and said seriously. The other 6 marquises also felt the powerful aura coming from afar, and their hearts sank. In the imperial city of Great Xia, Ning Chen walked over with Gui Gui. The prosperity of the imperial city was even more than before. Ning Chen looked at the familiar yet strange imperial city of the Great Xia dynasty. His eyes flashed with light. Father, Tenghu. Gui Gui stretched out her little hand and pointed at a stall not far away, and said expectantly, I see it. Ning Chen nodded and brought Gui Gui to buy the tanghu. At this time, not far away, the 7 marquises led by Marquis Triumphant Return walked over and stopped 10 steps away. In front of the stall 10 steps away, Ning Chen put a tanghulu in Gui Gui's hand and smiled. Gui Gui, is this enough? It's enough. Gui replied and stretched the tonghulu in her hand in front of Ning Chen, and said sweetly, "Father, eat." Ning Chen took a bite of the tonghu. It was sour and sweet, and the taste was exactly the same as before. 10 steps away, the 7 marquises looked at the white-haired young man, and no one dared to disturb him. Too similar. On the street, Ning Chen turned around and saw the 7 marquises and smiled. "Don't be nervous, Gui wants to eat the tonghulu. We will go back in a while." Marquis Jiming Sr. Marquis Bloodclad stepped forward, wearing a blood-red tight battle suit, and looked at the legendary protector of Great Xia, and said respectfully, "Our martial path has been stagnant for many years, and we hope that Senior can give us some pointers." Ning Chen looked at the 7 of them and sighed in his heart. So, the shackles of Great Xia martial marquises still existed after so long. A lifetime of fighting and killing. Although the martial marquises of Great Xia had shocking battle strength, their cultivation was severely restricted, and every step was difficult. "If you have time, come to 10-Mile Maple Forest to find me." Ning Chen calmed himself down and said with a smile. Then he left with Gui. Chapter 1620. When knowing destiny returned to the human world, Luo Xingchen became a saint in an unknown small world, shocking the world. In the era of the dusk of the saints, new saints appeared one after another. The fall of the Khanate saints gave all living beings a chance to achieve the great Tao. Luo Xingchen swaggered toward the celestial realm with great fanfare. Even from hundreds of millions of miles away, he could be clearly felt. In the dark world, the Lord of Darkness and Lord of Mo rushed over with their small worlds. They restrained their auras and wanted to severely injure the saint of the human world in one blow. Millions of miles away, the Lord of Darkness clenched his right hand, and a black spear appeared. It was surrounded by dark lightning, and its power was terrifying. The Lord of Darkness said calmly as the spear of darkness appeared. "Understood." The white-bearded Lord of Mo nodded. He tapped his right hand lightly, and colorful light filled the air. In the next moment, the spear of darkness tore through the air, surrounded by colorful light, and disappeared in an instant. Millions of miles away, Luo Xingchen was walking on the great Tao formed by thousands of arrows. Suddenly, he felt a tremor in his heart. The intuition of a martial arts powerhouse struck him, and his body dodged subconsciously. Boom! At this moment, colorful light filled the void, and a spear of darkness tore through the air, directly piercing through Luo Xingchen's chest. Blood splattered all over the sky. Luo Xingchen avoided his vital points by a hair's breadth, but he still suffered serious injuries. A moment later, the dark aura filled the void, covering the sky and the sun. The Lord of Darkness and Lord of Mo appeared together, and their powerful aura shocked the gods of the 9 heavens. The sudden killing intent left no chance for survival. The 2 powerful saints of the great Tao blocked the way and opened the path to hell. The former of the human world, "Today, you have no way out." Lord of Mo spoke, and his immortal aura was full of killing intent at this moment. He raised his hand and condensed his essence, and the colorful brilliance sealed all the paths. "The Lord of Darkness and the unknown old man, you 2 saints have joined forces. You really think highly of me." On the great Tao of arrows, Luo Xingchen forcibly suppressed the injuries in his body, looked at the 2 with a cold expression, and mocked. "A sharp tongue won't do you any good," the Lord of Darkness said coldly. He clenched his right hand, and the spear of darkness reappeared. In an instant, his figure disappeared and swept in front of Luo Xingchen. The spear of darkness slashed across the sky, and split space and time. As the killing intent approached, Falling Star did not hesitate to turn around and run. Luo Xingchen had just entered the Saint realm, so he knew better than anyone that it was impossible for him to fight against 2 saints of the Great Path. "You want to leave? Too naive." The Darkness Master snorted coldly. She took a step forward, and her figure shot out again. Not far away, Emoju raised his right hand. 7-colored light shone brightly, and a terrifying power filled the air. It was illusory and ethereal. 10,000 miles away, Luo Xingchen only felt his head shake, and his body was temporarily out of control. It was also during this momentary pause that the Darkness Master charged over from behind. The darkness spear in his hand slashed out, bringing forth a brilliant fountain of blood. Luo Xingchen's figure flew out. His back was covered in blood, and the wound was so deep that his bones could be seen. Facing the powerful Lord of Darkness and the mysterious Lord of Ink, Luo Xingchen gradually came to a realization. This time, he might not be able to escape this calamity. I didn't expect it to be my turn this time. Luo Xingchen no longer chose to run. He turned around and summoned the star scar bow that had accompanied him for his entire life. Star Streak, let's travel together. Luo Xingchen looked at the divine bow in his hand and said softly. The star scar bow hummed softly, as if responding to the call of its master. A hero at the end of his life, but he was not afraid at all. Luo Xingchen, who had been joking around all his life, became serious at this moment. His Saint Qi surged wildly, and a terrifying power pierced through heaven and earth, stirring up the clouds in the sky. It seems that you have seen your end. In the world of darkness, the Darkness Master looked at the human saint in front of her and said coldly. Not far away, Mo Zhu's white robe fluttered in the wind. His extraordinary aura was so powerful that it was terrifying. The two powerful saints of the Great Path gathered all their power, and the pressure caused the world to distort and wither. Ha! In the battle, Luo Xingchen let out a long roar. His long hair danced wildly in the wind like a mad demon. The three of them looked at each other, and the battle broke out. Luo Xingchen was surrounded by thousands of arrows. Every time he attacked, it had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Even a saint of the Great Path could not block it all. In the rumbling, the three figures rushed away. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing everything red. Facing Luo Xingchen, who was fighting with his life, the Darkness Master and Mo Zhu did not dare to be careless. They went all out. Every move they made stained the sky with blood. The aftermath of the battle continued to shake, destroying everything in sight. Luo Xingchen's injuries were getting worse and worse, but the smile on his face was getting brighter and crazier. Delightful, truly delightful. It turned out that it felt so good to put everything aside and fight with all your strength. An arrow pierced through the air and pierced through the Darkness Master's chest. At the same time, the spear in the Darkness Master's hand also pierced through Luo Xingchen's left shoulder. One move after another. Behind him, Mo Zhu walked out of thin air and slapped Luo Xingchen's back with an earth-shattering palm. The palm was so powerful that Luo Xingchen's heart meridians were shattered. Blood spurted out of Luo Xingchen's mouth, but he was not angry. Instead, he laughed. It turned out that this was the power of this old man. Ji Ming, I found it out for you. You must avenge me. Luo Xingchen laughed wildly. He turned around and slapped Mo Zhu's chest with an astonishing power. Mo Zhu frowned. His figure flashed and dodged the shocking palm. However, the moment the palm of Luo Xingchen dissipated, a purple arrow shot through the air, breaking through the shackles of darkness and disappeared into the end of the void. Darkness Master and Mo Zhu's expressions darkened when they saw this. In the mortal world, outside the Great Xia Imperial City, in the 10 miles maple forest, Ning Chen and Gui Gui had lived here for many days. The ordinary days were warm and peaceful. In the past few days, several martial marquises of the Great Xia Imperial City came one after another to ask for advice on martial arts or military strategy. Regarding the questions of the martial Marquis, Ning Chen answered them without holding anything back. He taught them everything he knew and did not hide anything. Everything seemed to be a cycle. Back then, when he was still a young Ji Ming, Kai Xian, Shui Yi, and the other martial marquises taught and guided the younger generation, allowing the Ji Ming Marquis of the Great Xia Imperial City to grow quickly. Now, it was time for Ning Chen to do something for the inheritance. Everything was logical and without any hesitation. After a few days of communication, the 7 martial marquises all gained a lot. The current Marquis Shui even broke through in the 10 miles maple forest, shocking the entire divine prefecture. A woman was conferred the title of Martial Marquis. Even in Ning Chen's era, no one could do it. It showed how amazing the current Marquis Shui Yi was. Ning Chen looked at the growth of the martial marquises of the younger generation with a gratified expression. "Daddy, it hurts." At this moment, Gui Gui's little mouth suddenly twitched. It was so painful that she was about to cry. Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He immediately reached out to check Gui Gui's meridians. Not good. Chapter 1621. In the 10-mile maple forest, the jade slip given by Luo Xingchen vibrated inside Gui Gui's body, stimulating her meridians. Ning Chen noticed the change in Gui, and his expression changed. Luo Xingchen was in trouble. Unable to hide the anger in his heart, Ning Chen's phoenix fire rose, and the phoenix demon body left his body and flew toward the 9 heavens. The phoenix soared through the 9 heavens, and its cry shocked the world. In an instant, all the people in the divine land felt the powerful and abnormal pressure, and they were shocked. In the starry sky, the phoenix flew past at the fastest speed. His heart, which had been calm for a long time, was filled with anger. In the face of the life and death crisis of his best friend, even if he was in the knowing destiny realm, he could no longer keep calm. In the unknown small world, the shocking battle was about to come to an end. Luo Xingchen's star scar bow was broken, and his body was covered in blood. He was about to die. The bridge of the great path that he had just condensed was broken, and he had to face the sneak attack of 2 saints of the great path as soon as he reached the great path. Even though Luo Xingchen was an unparalleled hero, he could not change his fate. Similarly, the 2 powerful saints of the great path, Mo Zhu and Darkness Lord, fully understood the horror of a mortal realm saint. 2 against 1, the 2 saints of the great path were seriously injured. Their bodies were penetrated by the mortal realm saint's powerful arrow chi, and even their bridge of the great path was damaged. On the battlefield, blood dyed the sky red. The extremely tragic battle frightened the 2 saints of the great path. The mortal realm saint was terrifying when he fought with his life on the line. If they had not launched a sneak attack first, it would have been difficult for them to kill him. "Powerhouse of the human world, you have made me see you in a new light," Mo Zhu said. His body shone with 7-colored brilliance, shaking off the blood stains on his white robe. He condensed his chi, and the principles of the great path spread out, ready to give the mortal realm saint a final blow. Not far away, Darkness Lord also circulated his ultimate chi, and the principles of darkness filled the air. The bridge of the great path appeared, and the terrifying dark pressure shocked the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The 2 saints of the great path burst out their saint chi at the same time, and their final blow was about to end the mortal realm saint's life. Just as his life was about to come to an end, Luo Xingchen, who was covered in blood and gradually lost consciousness, smiled a final smile. His saint chi surged out, and purple waves swept the world. Ha! With an earth-shattering roar, Falling Star's blood origin exploded. Using his body as a bow, his veins as a string, and his blood as an arrow, a shocking arrow that shook the world appeared. Blood-colored waves surged violently. The small world of darkness was completely destroyed by this terrifying power. The 2 saints of the great path were shocked when they saw this. They wanted to retreat, but it was too late. In the void, a figure bathed in blood drew his bow. 2 blood-colored arrow lights broke through the void. The 2 arrows were earth-shattering, breaking through space and time, reversing heaven and earth. Boom! With a terrifying tremor, the chests of the 2 figures of the great path were penetrated by the blood arrows. Blood splattered everywhere and dyed the sky red. Ugh! With a muffled groan, Lord Mo and Lord of Darkness retreated several steps, their bodies dyed red. Behind them, the bridge of the great path was hit by the arrow's power and showed signs of cracking. The 2 saints of the great path's lips turned red again. Retreat! Lord Mo and Lord of Darkness looked at each other and didn't dare to stay any longer. They immediately retreated. In the void, the consciousness of Falling Star, who had burned out all his vitality and was about to dissipate, began to dissipate. His memories were burned away like a tide, leaving only his instincts. His empty eyes looked toward the mortal world. Falling Star's figure flashed, and his body flew toward the mortal world. He was drawn back to the mortal world. In the distant heavenly sacred city, A pure land in the mortal world that even the chaos of darkness didn't affect. The former seventh divine general, the current lord of Heavenly Yu Sacred City, suddenly stood up. His beautiful eyes looked at the sky with shock. He was back. Heavenly Yu Sacred City. A figure covered in blood walked over slowly. He didn't even have the strength to walk. A hero at the end of his road. Falling Star's consciousness had dissipated, and his memories were gone. The only thing that supported him to come back was his instincts. Star. The seventh divine general rushed forward and held Falling Star, who was about to fall. His strong face could no longer be concealed, and drops of tears fell. 7. He couldn't say anything. Falling Star's last strength had been exhausted, and his body fell into the arms of the seventh divine general. Don't say anything, seventh sister will save you. The seventh divine general said sadly. His divine essence surged and entered the former's body. However, it was all in vain. The bridge of the great Tao was destroyed, and Falling Star, whose physical body and soul were all dead, had reached the end of his life. He came back just to see her and them one last time. All around Heavenly Yu Sacred City, streams of light flashed past. The divine generals of the past felt the aura of Falling Star and hurriedly rushed back. Star. The divine generals saw the figure in the arms of the seventh divine general and were shocked. Brother, save him. Seeing the divine generals rushing back, the seventh divine general hurriedly said as if he had found a life-saving straw. The first divine general went forward, and after looking, his face turned gloomy. It's too late. His divine essence has been severely damaged. I can't save him. The first divine general said with pain in his heart. Hearing this, the seventh divine general's body trembled violently. Tears fell from his eyes, wetting his clothes. In the sky, the phoenix's cry resounded. The huge fire phoenix swept past at an extremely fast speed, and even the heaven and earth were burned red. In the collapsed void, the traces of the battle could be seen faintly. The phoenix transformed. Ning Chen looked at the blood splattered in front of him, and his pupils shrank. The blood on the ground hadn't dried up yet. Ning Chen didn't stop for a moment. He turned into a fire phoenix and swept past quickly. In Heavenly Yu Sacred City, the seventh divine general carried Falling Star's body and walked towards the depths of the sacred city. Seventh sister. The fifth divine general opened his mouth, wanting to stop her. Let her go. The first divine general sighed and said, Among us, seventh sister has the best relationship with Star. Now that Star has appeared, seventh sister will be affected the most. But seventh sister is now the lord of the sacred city. The matters of the sacred city still need her to decide. The fifth divine general said worriedly, She will come back. The second divine general said calmly, Give her some time. At this moment, outside Heavenly Yu Sacred City, the phoenix's cry resounded in the sky. Knowing destiny followed Falling Star's aura and rushed to Heavenly Yu Sacred City. In the phoenix's fire, Ning Chen appeared. He looked at the disappearing figure in the distance and called out anxiously. Friend, please stay. The first divine general stepped forward and stopped knowing destiny. He said calmly, This is the territory of Heavenly Yu Sacred City. Without the permission of the city lord, no one is allowed to trespass. The two looked at each other. Their auras were extremely powerful. Facing knowing destiny, who was a saint of the great path, the first divine general of Heavenly Yu Sacred City didn't back down. He defended the last glory of the sacred city. Chapter 1622. In the Heavenly Yu Sacred City, Ji Ming chased after Luo Xingqian's aura but was stopped by the first divine general. Ning Chen, who was too concerned, ignored their past friendship and barged into the sacred city. Suddenly, a great battle broke out. The 6 divine generals of the Heavenly Yu Sacred City worked together and their power was earth-shattering. In the sacred city, the phoenix fire rose and the demonic flame was earth-shattering. The two of them merged and their palms were destructive. The knowing destiny state was fighting against the 6 Heavenly Yu divine generals. Terrifying shockwaves roared and surged, shaking the stars in the sky. It was a shocking scene. The 6 divine generals worked together and blocked Ji Ming's full power palm. In the battle, a huge Tao bridge appeared behind the 6 divine generals. The 6 of them worked together and had the power of a saint. The master of the human world should know about the relationship between Luo Xingqian and the heavenly Yu sacred city. Since Luo Xingqian chose to come back, please respect his will. The first divine general looked at the master of the human world and said calmly, "I want to save him." Ning Chen raised his extreme vitality and said, "His soul has dissipated. Even the master of the human world can't save him. Please go back." The second divine general said coldly. Ning Chen's face fell and he didn't say anything more. He used the Qilins loss technique again and pushed the 6 divine generals back. 10 feet away, the 6 divine generals of the heavenly Yu sacred city stopped and formed a formation to block the master of the human world. 9 heavens star-picking hand rising rain. The 6 divine generals worked together and their power was shocking. Ning Chen moved the stars with his palms and the falling rain shook the world. The shadows of stars fell from the sky and smashed towards the 6 divine generals of the heavenly Yu sacred city. The 6 divine generals of the heavenly Yu sacred city's mouth turned red and they took a few steps back. Ning Chen turned into a phoenix and flew towards the depths of the heavenly Yu sacred city. In the depths of the heavenly Yu sacred city, the 7th divine general carried Luo Xingqian's body and walked over step by step. His clothes were stained with blood and it was dazzling. In front of him, the space stirred and the 7th divine general carried Luo Xingqian into it and disappeared. At this moment, the fire phoenix flew to the front of the space whirlpool. Ning Chen turned into a phoenix and walked out. He looked at the 2 people who disappeared in the space whirlpool and entered it without hesitation. The unknown small world inside the spatial vortex kept changing. The moment Ning Chen entered, he lost track of the 2's auras. At the end of the small world, the 7th divine general carried Luo Xingqian's body and walked forward step by step. There was no longer any color in his empty eyes. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Even the strong-willed 7th godly general could not maintain his usual calmness at this moment. He lost his mind and was pulled by a mysterious force into an unknown world. Behind him, Ning Chen flashed past layer after layer of small worlds as he searched for the aura of the falling star with all his might. After walking for an unknown period of time, at the end of the thousands of small worlds, in front of the 7th godly general, a huge godly demon body appeared. It was as big as a star and had a terrifying aura. However, he could no longer sense any aura from the fiend god. Although the body of the chaotic divine demon that had died in Grand Primordium had been preserved, there was no longer any vitality left in him. Seeing the chaos divine demon in front of him, the 7th divine general, who had lost his mind, did not show any surprise. He placed Luo Xingqian's corpse in front of the chaos divine demon. "From now on I give up my blood and bones. I am willing to fall into the cycle of reincarnation forever." May the 7th divine general recited the incantation. Instantly, blood flowed out of the 7th divine general's body and flew into the body of the chaos divine demon. To save Luo Xingqian's life, the 7th divine general gave up everything to revive the chaos divine demon that had been suppressed in the heavenly Yu sacred city for countless years. "God, I will fulfill your wish." In the void, the chaos divine demon opened his eyes and woke up from his eternal slumber. The immortal chaos divine demon was revived. Instantly, the entire world changed colors. The 9 heavens and 10 earths changed drastically. 7th sister. In the heavenly Yu sacred city, the 6 heavenly Yu divine generals' faces changed. They looked at each other and were shocked. 7th sister had awakened the chaos divine demon. The chaos divine demon that had been suppressed in the heavenly Yu sacred city for countless years had awakened. He stood up and his abnormally huge body was even bigger than a star. In front of the chaos divine demon, the 7th divine general's body gradually dissipated and was about to disappear from the world. Using his life as the price to revive the chaos divine demon, the 7th divine general lost all his vitality and his divine soul was wiped out from the cycle of reincarnation. In the void, the chaos divine demon raised his hand. Chaotic aura entered Luo Xingqian's body and completed the contract that the seventh divine general had made with his life. Gradually, Luo Xingqian's body regained vitality. Although it was weak, he could clearly feel it. When the seventh divine general saw this, a gratified smile appeared on his illusory face. At this moment, Huafeng flew over from behind and took her human form. Ningchen stopped and looked at the huge body in front of him. He immediately recognized the identity of the Chaos Divine Demon. He had seen those Chaos Divine Demons in the Time Forbidden Land and was no stranger to them. However, hadn't the Chaos Divine Demon already fallen? Why was there still a Chaos Divine Demon alive? Without thinking, Ningchen flew over to Luo Xingqian and was about to leave with him. In front of the Chaos Divine Demon, the seventh Divine General's body dissipated and his soul returned to the world. After the contract was removed, the Chaos Divine Demon saw Huafeng in front of him and reached out to grab her. The huge hand of the Chaos Divine Demon covered the sky and no laws of heaven and earth could stop it. It was horrifying. In the sky full of phoenix fire, Huafeng flew at an extreme speed. She broke through the restrictions of time and space and rushed out of the space whirlpool. At this moment, the 6 heavenly divine generals arrived. When they saw the two of them, they were shocked. Boom! In the space whirlpool, the huge hand of the Chaos Divine Demon reached out and grabbed the two of them. Form the array. The first divine general's face changed as he shouted. The other 5 divine generals did not hesitate and joined forces to activate the God's sealing array of Heavenly Divine City. Suddenly, the entire Heavenly Divine City shone with golden light and turned into a golden soup to suppress the awakened Chaos Divine Demon. It was a shocking array that had never been seen before. It could even suppress the Chaos Divine Demon. Bring Xingqian away. After the array was activated, the first divine general looked at the two of them and sent them out of the Heavenly Divine City with a palm. Outside the Heavenly Divine City, Ningchen looked at the Heavenly Divine City that was engulfed by the golden waves and could not hide his shock. The Heavenly Divine City was sealed. The living could not enter and the dead could not leave. It was only to suppress the legendary Chaos Divine Demon. In the void, Ningchen looked at it for a long time. He sighed softly and turned to leave. He did not know how long the Heavenly Divine City could suppress the Chaos Divine Demon, nor did he know what would happen to the 6 Heavenly Divine Generals. He only knew that no one could enter the Heavenly Divine City. Human Realm, East Region Divine Continent, 10 miles Maple Forest. The phoenix flew over and merged into its body. Little gourd. Ningchen placed Luo Xingqian on the bed in the wooden house and said, Immortal Elder. Little gourd flew out with 2 small buds on its head. It was cute. I'll leave him to you. Don't let anything happen to him. Ningchen said seriously. Little gourd felt Luo Xingqian's weak aura and his face turned bitter. He was going to bleed again. Father, what happened to Uncle Xingqian? Gue looked up and asked curiously. Uncle Xingqian was tired and fell asleep. He will wake up when he has a good rest. Ningchen looked at his close friend on the bed and said softly. Chapter 1623. In the 10-mile Maple Forest, knowing destiny saved Luo Xingqian and healed him with the help of the little gourd. The chaotic divine demon suppressed in Heavenly Yu Sacred City was able to reverse life and death. It even saved a sage whose divine soul was about to dissipate. Such ability was shocking. In 100 days, Luo Xingqian's injuries were stabilized. However, he was too heavily injured and would not wake up in a short time. The experts of the mortal world died one after another, and their combat strength was declining. The matter of the Sage of the Great Path was not solved yet, and now there was an unknown chaotic divine demon. Ningchen's heart was heavy as he tried to think of a solution. According to the situation of the battle that day, the strength of the chaotic fiend god suppressed in the Heavenly Transcendence Sacred City was not much weaker than a god of the 8th heaven. If such a terrifying existence broke out of the seal, they would be in big trouble. Since the beginning of time, he thought that only the god of hell and the 8th heaven deity had survived. Now there was a third chaotic divine demon, which was really a headache. Outside the wooden house, the little gourd and Gue were playing with each other. They were innocent and were not affected by the outside world. Looking at the two, Ning Chen's heavy heart lightened a little. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Now that things had come to this, there was no point in worrying. Fortunately, there were many experts in the sage realm in the immortal realm. Even if they faced a chaotic divine demon, they would still have a chance. "Daddy, I'm hungry." As the sun set, Gui, who was tired from playing, ran over and said in a childish voice. In the air, the little gourd rode on his gourd and looked at the people in front of him with anticipation. "What do you want to eat?" Ning Chen asked with a smile. "Meaty. Great medicine," the two little guys said in a childish voice. Ning Chen chuckled and flipped his right hand. A spiritual herb appeared and flew to the little gourd. Seeing this, the little gourd's eyes curved into crescents as it smiled happily. Gui's dinner was easy to solve. There were many wild animals in 10-Mile Maple Forest. Ning Chen picked up some random things and made a delicious meal for Gui. After the two little guys were full, they fell asleep contentedly. Ning Chen stood under the night sky as thoughts flashed through his eyes. With the current growth rate of the celestial realm, it would take at least 10,000 years before it could completely break away from the outside world. This was a long process that could not be rushed. In the time restriction, he saw how terrifying that 8th-layer deity was. He was one of the supreme life sacrificers who had created this great world. He possessed supreme authority. In the night sky, Ning Chen stared at the horizon with a grave expression. Meanwhile, in the 8th layer of heaven, the deities were also watching the human world. Their calm expressions did not have the slightest ripple. The growth of the saint fetus was faster than he had imagined. Perhaps it would only take 10,000 years for the power of the saint fetus to fully awaken. At that time, he would truly surpass this world and become a god that reigns supreme over everything. At the same time, in Heavenly Yu's sacred city, golden light shone as the seal was completely opened. 6 Heavenly Yu divine generals strengthened the seal, suppressing the chaos god demons. However, the chaotic divine demon was too powerful, beyond imagination. Within the space vortex, the chaos god fiend stretched out his palm, shattering the space around him as he walked out of the restraints of space. The expressions of the 6 Heavenly Yu divine generals changed. However, the God-sealing formation required 7 divine generals to support it together in order to unleash its full power. Now that the 7th divine general had fallen, the God-sealing formation could no longer trap the chaos god fiend. The golden sealed space crumbled inch by inch under the power of the chaos god fiend. With every inch the space crumbled, the power of the God-sealing formation weakened a little. The 6 Heavenly Yu divine generals looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's hearts. As the divine generals of Heavenly Yu's sacred city, they could not allow the chaos god fiend to break the seal. However, just as the 6 Heavenly Yu divine generals were about to sacrifice themselves and use their life force to seal the chaos god fiend, their eyes suddenly lost focus. Just like how the 7th divine general had lost himself and used his life force to revive the chaos god fiend, the 6 divine generals' wills also began to crumble under the influence of the chaos god fiend's power. Suddenly, the golden sealed space crumbled even faster. The day of the chaos god fiend breaking the seal was right before their eyes. The crisis was imminent. In the above heavens, in the unknown small worlds, there were more people breaking into the saint realm. And it wasn't just one person. The terrifying saint aura continued to spread, affecting the entire world. In the age of saints' dusk, the experts of the mortal realm stepped into the saint realm one after another, replacing the original innate saints. It was as if the cycle of reincarnation was inevitable and irreversible. The remaining innate saints of the mortal realm were unwilling to withdraw from the stage of history. They began to counterattack the saints of the mortal realm. The war finally broke out. The saints led by Darkness Lord and Mo Lord began to obstruct the saints of the mortal realm. However, with the warning of the falling stars, the newly ascended saints of the mortal realm concealed their aura immediately and returned to the celestial realm before the innate saints noticed. In the celestial realm, the saints of the mortal realm stood quietly. Their powerful aura was shocking. Outside the celestial realm, the number of innate saints that far exceeded the number of saints of the mortal realm stood in the air, preparing to counterattack the celestial realm. The stalemate between the two sides lasted for several days, but no one made the first move. In front of the saints of the mortal realm, Fan Lingyue, who was dressed in a light blue dress, stared at the innate saints in front of her. The killing intent in her eyes was not concealed at all. As long as the saints were alive, the mortal realm's calamity would never end. In this era, she must end this cycle of reincarnation. Not making a move? Dawn Moon House Master, who was dressed in a silver-gray cloak, looked at the saints in the sky and smiled. No hurry. Fan Lingyue said indifferently, getting rid of them is only a matter of time. Now, the most important thing is to strengthen the celestial realm. As long as they don't make a move, we won't make a move either. That's a pity. Dawn Moon House Master said with a regretful expression, I thought there would be a good show to watch. Not far away, Mu Qianshang held the snow sword and stabbed it into the ground. Supreme Sword will soared into the sky. Inky white light overflowed and the majestic sword pressure startled the stars in the 9 heavens. There were not many saints of the mortal realm. However, every one of them had experienced thousands of tribulations and grew up. Their aura was extremely terrifying. The innate saints in the void looked at the saints of the mortal realm in the celestial realm with fear in their eyes. Including Darkness Lord and Mo Lord, 10 innate saints surrounded the celestial realm, waiting for a chance to make a move. In the mortal realm, in the 10 miles maple forest, Ning Chun drew a chessboard on the ground. He used stones as chess pieces and placed them on the board. Every time he placed a chess piece, the wind and clouds of the world would change. The scene was shocking. Daddy, what are you doing? At the side, Gui Gui asked curiously. Playing chess. Ning Chun said with a gentle expression. Who is Daddy playing chess with? Gui Gui asked in confusion. Heaven. Ning Chun pointed to the sky and said softly, in this life, Daddy has won this world many times, but also lost many times. However, Daddy doesn't want to lose this time. Chapter 1624. Above high heavens, immortal realm, mortal realm sages and the 10 innate sages were locked in a stalemate. For the past few days, no one had taken the initiative to strike. On the 9th day, a saint aura descended from nowhere. The arrival of the 11th innate saint caused the situation to become even more unbalanced. Above the celestial realm, the expressions of the saints of the mortal realm turned solemn. As they watched more and more saints gather in the sky, their hearts became heavier and heavier. Not good. Judging from the current situation, the Khanate saints had sensed the threat of the mortal world. They wanted to strengthen their forces in the mortal world and eliminate the saints in one fell swoop. We can't wait any longer. In front of all the saints, Mu Qianshang calmly said, Let me go first. As the sound of his voice faded, the sword pressure above the celestial domain soared. Mu Qianshang rose up, walking out of the celestial domain. Kill! In front of the 11 innate saints, a young man with his hair tied up in a bun waved his hand and a long spear appeared in his hand. He dashed out and clashed with the innate saints. The battle between the saints was earth-shattering. In the battle, the sword was dazzling and the spear was like lightning, causing the sky to lose its color. This was an earth-shattering battle. Inside and outside the immortal realms, the saints and the 10 innate saints were all watching this battle, waiting for the result. The great battle continued for an entire day and night. The entire sky was shattered, causing everyone to be horrified. Outside the battlefield, the Lord of Darkness was observing the battle in front of him. He secretly channeled the power of darkness, and a black spear appeared. An instant later, the Lord of Darkness moved, instantly appearing in the middle of the battlefield. His long spear slashed out mercilessly. The Master of Darkness launched a sneak attack. In the immortal region, the Dawn Moon House Mistress's lips curled up slightly. Her figure flashed and appeared in front of Mu Qianshang. Yellow Spring appeared and blocked the attack of the Lord of Darkness. There was a violent tremor, and the aftermath of the battle was so powerful that it knocked the 4 saints of the Great Path away. A sneak attack? The Lord of Darkness is truly powerful. The Dawn Moon House Master looked at the Master of Darkness in front of her and smiled. The Lord of Darkness frowned and looked at the saint in front of him. A strange look flashed in his eyes. This person gave him a very strange feeling. He didn't seem like an ordinary human. Beside the Dawn Moon Tower's mistress, Mu Qianshang coldly snorted and pointed his finger at his sword, causing a sword wave to rumble out. In front of him, the Lord of Darkness swung his black spear and blocked the sword chi. After a day and night of battle, the strength of the mortal world saint made the 11 innate saints even more fearful and their hearts felt heavy. Above the immortal realm, Nu Chang looked at the horizon, her eyes gleaming. The more we wait, the more innate saints will appear. This is not a long-term solution. Did Ji Ming say when he would be back? Nu Chang asked. He probably won't return before the immortal region completely separates from the great world. Fan Lingyue said calmly. As long as he is not here, that 8th heavenly layer deity will not act against the celestial realm. Therefore, if he doesn't return, the celestial realm might be safer. That may be the case, but what about these Khanate saints? Nu Chang asked hesitantly. We'll deal with it ourselves, Fan Lingyue replied. In the human world, in the 10 miles maple forest, it was time to sweep the tombs once a year. Ning Chen brought Gege to sweep Zhang Xuan's tomb and carefully clean the weeds around the tomb. At this time, outside the Tenli maple forest, an extremely beautiful woman walked over with a maid. She also came to sweep her grandson's grave. Princess, there seems to be someone. The maid said when she saw the white-haired man and the child. Xia Xiao followed the former's gaze, and a strange expression flashed across her beautiful face. How could there be someone here? Empress Zhangsun was a virtuous queen in the history of the great Xia. However, it had been too long since then, so it was impossible for her descendants to still be alive. Xia Xiao stepped forward with the maid and knelt in front of Empress Zhangsuan's tomb. Ning Chen saw the woman but did not disturb her. He continued to clean up the weeds and leaves with Gie. Father, someone came to see Empress. Gui said while pulling the weeds. Father saw her, Ning Chen said with a smile. Father, do you know her? Gui asked curiously. No, Ning Chen replied softly. Gui looked curiously at the woman kneeling in front of the tomb, her little hands still pulling weeds. In front of Zhang Xuan's tomb, Xia Xiao also saw Gui not far away. The two looked at each other, and it was indescribably funny. Gui was very obedient and cute. Xia Xiao liked this child at first sight. After bowing to Empress Zhangsun, she took the initiative to go forward. Little brother, what's your name? Xia Xiao squatted down and asked softly. Gui. Gui said in a childish voice. How old are you, Gui? Xia Xiao continued to ask. Gui stretched out her fingers and counted. 100, 200. I'm many years old. It's not good for a child to lie, Xia Xiao said. I'm not lying, Gui replied in a childish voice. Not far away, Ning Chen smiled and ignored the two's conversation. At this time, the maid beside Xia Xiao noticed the face of the white-haired man not far away. She was shocked. Princess. The maid gently tugged at the princess's clothes and said anxiously. Xia Xiao looked back, puzzled. What's wrong? Princess, look at that person. The maid could not hide the shock in her eyes. When Xia Xiao heard this, she looked at the white-haired man in front of her. At first, she was stunned, but then her face also showed shock. The great Xia Jiming Marquis. It was too similar, almost exactly the same as the statue in front of the palace. A moment later, Xia Xiao came back to her senses. She wanted to go forward and ask, but she was afraid of the man's possible identity and did not dare to speak. After thinking about it, Xia Xiao looked at the child in front of her and said gently, Gui, is that your father? Gui nodded. What's your father's name? Xia Xiao continued to ask. Gui thought about it and said, Ning Chen. When Xia Xiao heard this, she was shocked. At this moment, she finally confirmed the identity of the white-haired young man in front of her. Xiao greets the Marquis. Xia Xiao came back to her senses, took 2 steps forward, and bowed respectfully. Ning Chen smiled and said, Which princess? the ninth princess. Xia Xiao answered truthfully. She was also ranked ninth back then. Ning Chen smiled as if remembering the past. The ninth princess of the great Xia dynasty was more beautiful than a flower. Even the history books were filled with ink, but he praised a woman's appearance. This was extremely rare in history books. Are you really the Marquis? Xia Xiao still felt like she was dreaming and could not believe it. Don't I look like it? Ning Chen smiled and said, Indeed. Hearing the former admitted himself, Xia Xiao suppressed the shock in her heart and began to accept this unbelievable fact. The legend of the great Xia dynasty from 10,000 years ago was still alive. Facing the descendant of Qiu, Ning Chen also felt a sense of familiarity, and his attitude was very kind. Ning Chen had never been stingy with his smile towards the younger generation. Seeing the kind attitude of the person in front of her, Xia Xiao's nervousness lessened a lot, and she asked a lot of things about the past. Ning Chen also told her everything he knew and did not hide anything. It was not until the sun set that Xia Xiao left. The carriage rumbled as it drove out of the 10 miles maple forest. Chapter 1625. It was winter in the 10-mile maple forest. Heavy snow fell as expected, and the whole world seemed to have turned silver white. In front of the wooden house, Gege, who was dressed like a small cotton ball, was happily playing in the snow, covered in snowflakes. Ning Chen stood not far away, looking at Gege with a gentle look on his face. Xia Xiao had arrived in the 10-mile maple forest, but this time, she did not bring a maid. The one who came with her was the current Marquis blood-clad. The blood-clad Marquis was still wearing a blood-red tight-fitting battle suit, which outlined his curvy figure. Coupled with his wild and beautiful face, he did not look inferior to the peerless beauty of the ninth princess of the Xia dynasty. Marquis. The two arrived and bowed in unison. No need to be so polite. Ning Chen smiled and replied, Why are you here at this time? In recent days, the ninth princess of the Xia dynasty and the 7 marquises had come often. If it were him, he would definitely come over when he had the chance. It would be a waste not to use a senior. Wasn't he the same back then? Marquis, I have some questions about martial arts that I can't figure out. I hope you can guide me, Marquis Bloodclad said respectfully. When you encounter a bottleneck, whether you persist to the end or change your method, you just need to believe in yourself. Any path can be achieved. The key is to believe in your own path. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen looked at Gege, who had fallen in the snow in front of him, smiled, and said, Gege, be careful. Got it, Daddy. Gege got up, responded in a childish voice, and continued to play with the little gourd. When Marquis Bloodclad heard the former's words, a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. Perhaps she was thinking too much. She should have believed in herself and persisted. On the side, Xia Xiao saw that the conversation between the two had ended and said softly, Marquis, my father knows that you are back and wants to see you. I wonder if you can go back to the palace to have a look. Ning Chen shook his head gently and said, No, there are no more old friends in the Xia dynasty. There is no point in going back. When Xia Xiao heard this, she fell silent and did not try to persuade him anymore. Marquis, can you give me some advice? Marquis Bloodclad came back to his senses and looked at the legendary figure of the divine prefecture in front of him with an extremely serious expression. Ning Chen glanced to the side and nodded gently. Sure. Marquis Bloodrobed waved his hand, and a long sword flew out. The sword was dazzling, and it was obviously not an ordinary sword. Mingxue Heaven Saint is the sword I use to guard the borders. I'll lend it to you for now. As soon as the blood-clad Marquis finished speaking, he clenched his left hand. Then, another divine weapon flew out from the carriage not far away. This divine weapon was azure and had an equally extraordinary aura. Ning Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed the Mingxue Heaven Saint. Feeling the strong baleful aura on the sword, a light flashed in his eyes. The sword of the Marquis of de Xia had always been stained with too much killing. Although the Marquis of Blood Robe in front of him was a woman, she was no exception. Please. The Marquis in the bloody robe said. His body moved and his sword moved. With a king sound, the two swords clashed. Waves of snow filled the sky, covering both eyes. Amidst the drifting snowflakes, the two swords clashed again and again. One was like a swimming dragon emerging from the water, the other was like a boundless star, each displaying their abilities. At a distance of 10 feet, neither of them released their auras. Only their swords shone with extreme sharpness. In the battle, the Marquis in the bloody robe displayed all his abilities. The more he fought, the more shocked he was. Although she was already mentally prepared, she could only truly experience the strength of the Marquis in front of her after truly exchanging blows. It turned out that there was such a sword above the sword Dao. The speed of the sword was not fast, but every move was hard to block. It was like a starry sky, but one would never be able to truly touch it. Boom! After 10 moves, the two swords clashed again. The Marquis, who had not used up his sword power, felt his right arm go numb. The sword in his hand involuntarily flew out and stabbed into the ground. Ning Chen smiled and extended his hand to return the Mingxue Heaven Saint. "Thank you for your guidance." The Marquis took the sword and bowed respectfully. "Next time, bring a stick of candied haws for Gue Gue." Ning Chen smiled. The Marquis was startled, but soon recovered. His stiff expression revealed a rare smile. He nodded and said, "Okay." The two stayed in the 10 miles maple forest for half a day and then left. The carriage left 2 long wheel marks in the snow. It was so clear. In the imperial city, many people secretly guessed the identity of the people in the 10 miles maple forest. The 7 Marquis and the 9th princess of the Great Xia dynasty had visited many times, which made people suspicious. However, no one who had been to the 10 miles maple forest revealed their identity as knowing destiny. The 10 miles maple forest had become a forbidden area, and no one was allowed to easily set foot in it. However, peace was always short-lived, and war was inevitable. At the border of the Great Xia dynasty, the invasion from the neighboring countries broke out. The 7 Marquis of the Great Xia dynasty left the imperial city and went to the border one after another. The 10 miles maple forest became quiet from then on. The Marquis promised to bring candied haws for Gue Gue, but he never had the chance to send it. On the battlefield, the Marquis died. His body was bathed in blood. He left his life on the battlefield. Generals died in hundreds of battles, and warriors returned in 10 years. In the endless history of the Great Xia dynasty, more than 90% of the Marquis had died on the battlefield. The Marquis was not the first, nor would he be the last. When the news spread back to the imperial city, the whole country was in grief. The current emperor of the Great Xia dynasty personally went to the Marquis temple to set up a monument for the Marquis. Xia Xiao looked at the memorial tablet in the Marquis temple, and tears fell from her eyes. In the 10 miles maple forest, a carriage came. Xia Xiao got off the carriage and looked at the white-haired man who always stood quietly in front of the wooden house. Her mood was indescribably complicated. When Ning Chen saw the person who came, he still had a peaceful smile on his face. He said, "You're here." "Marquis, the Marquis has died in battle." Xia Xiao opened her mouth and said, unable to suppress the sadness in her eyes. When Ning Chen heard this, he sighed softly and said, "Is that so? What a pity." Xia Xiao took out a stick of candied haws, walked in front of Gue Gue, and handed it to her. It was too late to fulfill the promise of the Marquis, so she could only fulfill it for her. "Thank you, sister." Gue Gue took the stick of candied haws and said in a childish voice. "Gue Gue is so obedient." Xia Xiao reached out and rubbed Gue Gue's little head. She stood up and looked at the Marquis Jiming. She said, "Marquis, when do you think this war will really stop?" Ning Chen shook his head and said, "I don't know. A long time ago, someone asked me this question. Until today, I still haven't found the answer." "Are we all going to die?" Xia Xiao's eyes were filled with sadness. Ning Chen said calmly, "No matter if it's a man, a god, or a saint, there will be a day when they die. Even the heavens and earth can't be eternal, let alone humans. As long as you have truly lived, death is not scary." She admired the Marquis very much. Xia Xiao said a secret that could no longer be confirmed. She said sadly, the reason why she worked so hard to become a Marquis is because she saw the Marquis as her life's goal. Chapter 1626. Time flew in the 10 miles maple forest. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed since knowing Destiny's return. Marquis Bloodclad died in battle, and a memorial tablet was added to the Marquis shrine. For thousands of years, this was the epitome of the Marquis of the Great Xia. Even so, generation after generation of Marquis continued to protect this great nation without regrets. At the beginning of spring, a carriage rumbled outside the imperial city. A person with a special identity came to the 10 miles maple forest. Xia Xiao walked down from the carriage, supporting a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was dressed plainly, but his aura was extraordinary. The middle-aged man was only about 40 years old, but his hair was mostly white, and he looked exhausted. "Father, be careful." Xia Xiao supported her father and said worriedly. Emperor Xia walked down from the carriage and walked towards the maple forest. "Marquis." Emperor Xia looked at the white-haired man and bowed respectfully. "If you're not well, don't come." Ningchen looked at the current emperor of the Great Xia dynasty and said calmly, "Marquis, you've been back for so long. I should have come to visit you long ago." Emperor Xia sighed. "I've heard legends about you since I was young. I didn't expect to be fortunate enough to see you in person." "Your Majesty, do you have any business here?" Ningchen asked. "I've come to ask you, Marquis. I ascended the throne when I was 16, and I've been on the throne for 25 years. Since I took over the Great Xia dynasty, I haven't dared to relax for even a moment. I don't dare to say that I'm a wise emperor, but I'm definitely not a fatuous one. Why is the Great Xia dynasty still in chaos and war?" Emperor Xia said with a puzzled expression. "It's not necessarily a good thing to attend to everything personally." Ningchen looked at the 40-year-old emperor with a head full of white hair and said softly, "Learn how to delegate power." Hearing this, Emperor Xia revealed a puzzled look. "So simple?" "It's that simple." Ningchen said calmly, "Do you think the people are more important than the emperor, or the emperor is more important than the people?" Emperor Xia was silent. After a moment, he replied, "The people are more important than the emperor. The emperor is more important than the people, and so are the people. Similarly, the people are more important than the emperor." Ningchen looked into the distance and continued, "I asked you whether the people are more important than the emperor, or the emperor is more important than the people. You hesitated. In your heart, you still think the emperor is more important." Emperor Xia remained silent and did not reply. Ningchen turned around and looked at the person before him. "Back then, the military advisor of Northern Meng and I wanted to push for the arrival of 100 generations of prosperity. Our goal was the same. However, at that time, Grand Xia and the Northern Meng royal court were locked in a fierce battle. Why do you think this is?" "Different standpoints," Emperor Xia replied. "That's right, we have different standpoints." Ningchen said calmly, "Just like Northern Meng and Great Xia, there are also different standpoints between the imperial court and the people. However, different standpoints don't mean that they are opposing each other. When the emperor of Great Xia values the people and the people value the emperor, perhaps there will be fewer wars." Hearing this, a thoughtful look flashed across Emperor Xia's face. After a long while, he bowed respectfully and said, "I've learned something. Go back. There are many capable officials in Grand Xia. Learn how to give them more authority. Similarly, you can also give more authority to the commoners. At that time, you wouldn't be as tired as you are now." Ningchen advised. Emperor Xia nodded. Beside him, Xia Xiao bowed respectfully. Then she helped her father into the carriage and left. Just as knowing Destiny was staying in the 10 miles maple forest, the saints of above heavens, immortal realm, and mortal realm were also in a stalemate with the 11 Khanate saints. For the first time, no one had the upper hand. Although the saints of mortal realm had all become saints not long ago, they had fought all the way from mortals to saints. Their combat experience was far beyond that of Khanate saints. In the void, the black spear in the back of the Darkness Master's right hand surged fiercely. She stared at the saints of mortal realm in the immortal realm with undisguised killing intent. In the immortal realm, in front of the saints, Fan Lingyue's figure slowly rose. She finally chose to attack personally. "It's you." The Darkness Master looked at the woman in front of her and said coldly, "I remember you." In the sky above the immortal realm, Fan Lingyue stared at the Darkness Master in front of her. The moonlight around her intensified. 3 moves. Fan Lingyue calmly replied. "Come then." Hearing this, the Darkness Master's face was filled with anger. Her figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of her. The black spear swept past. The moment it came into contact with the moonlight, the two forces clashed and the power of darkness quickly dissipated. Fan Lingyue stretched out her hand. Her slender fingers were stronger than any divine weapon as she directly grabbed the black spear. With a bang, the black spear collapsed. The Darkness Master's expression changed slightly. The bridge of Great Tao appeared behind her and the power of darkness instantly climbed to the limit. With a palm strike, the Darkness Master counterattacked, wanting to severely injure the woman in front of her. Fan Lingyue stepped forward and avoided the palm strike. Her slender hand condensed essence and directly pierced into the former's chest. It was a shocking scene. Blood splattered everywhere. Fan Lingyue looked coldly at the Darkness Master in front of her and said lightly, "It seems that I have overestimated you." After saying that, moonlight rose around Fan Lingyue and directly sent the Darkness Master flying. 100 feet away, the Darkness Master stopped and vomited a mouthful of blood. Black energy surged around her body and healed her injuries. She was defeated in just 2 moves. The Darkness Master and the 10 Khanate Saints were shocked and angry. They looked at the woman in front of them, their eyes full of fear. In the void, Fan Lingyue looked at the 11 Khanate Saints in front of her and said coldly, "Is there anyone else who wants to fight?" The 11 Khanate Saints' expressions were abnormally ugly. As saints, the strength of the woman in front of them was beyond their imagination. Perhaps, other than the 8th heaven deity, no one could suppress this human woman. "Let me ask you a thing or two." At this moment, Mo Master, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward and said calmly, "Ji Ming said that you were once his master." Fan Lingyue looked at the white-robed old man in front of her and said coldly, "The 9th son is not bad. He has exceeded my expectations." Mo Master said with a smile, "The student has surpassed the master. As his master, I really want to have a real fight with him." "No need. You won't have the chance." After saying that, Fan Lingyue's figure moved instantly. Inside and outside the immortal domain, the saints only saw a flash of moonlight. It was unbelievably fast. Mo Master's expression also turned serious. Colorful brilliance spread around him as he fully unleashed his cultivation. In the colorful brilliance, Fan Lingyue's figure suddenly stopped. Her body was actually out of control. Mo Master walked in the colorful brilliance and came to the front of the human woman in front of him. "Young man, you're still too anxious." Mo Master raised his hand. The colorful brilliance rose and devoured the woman in front of him. "So this is your ability." At this moment, Fan Lingyue, whose body was out of control, sneered and said, "No wonder Luo Xingchen was willing to sacrifice his life to send that arrow. Reversing reality and illusion is indeed a terrifying ability. However, I'm not Luo Xingchen. I'm stronger than him." After saying that, Fan Lingyue raised her hand, grabbed Mo Master's right shoulder, and threw him toward the mountain in the distance. Boom! With a loud tremor, mountains thousands of miles away collapsed, and rocks fell like rain. Chapter 1627. Above the heavens, the 11 Khanate Saints attacked and trapped the celestial realm. At the critical moment, Fan Lingyue personally attacked and severely injured the Lord of Darkness in 2 moves. Saints were immortal and almost immortal. However, there was no true immortal before absolute strength. The Lord of Darkness retreated in defeat and Mo Lord attacked. Ji Ming's former master had always been mysterious and unpredictable. Facing Mo Lord, Fan Lingyue didn't say anything. She stepped forward and the moonlight shone brightly. Her slender hand tore the void apart like lightning. Mo Lord also attacked, reversing reality and illusion to confuse the opponent's 5 senses. He didn't expect that his ability that had always been successful would be thwarted this time. "Do you think that Starfall's sacrifice was useless?" Fan Lingyue's slender hand reached out like a divine weapon, grabbing Mo Lord's shoulder and throwing him out. Mountains collapsed one after another. Amidst the rain of stones, Mo Lord stopped and raised his right hand. The seven-colored immortal technique appeared again. Immortal technique, waning moons. The immortal technique was shocking. As Mo Lord raised his hand, the entire great world rumbled and changed. A huge divine moon appeared between heaven and earth. It was unknown whether it was real or illusory, but a gap appeared on the divine moon and tore the mortal realm saint's body apart. Fan Lingyue stood quietly in the divine moon, personally feeling the shocking power of the immortal technique. Her expression was unusually cold. Jiming and I created the celestial realm together. In this world, other than us, who dares to call themselves immortals? Fan Lingyue said coldly. She clenched her left hand. In an instant, the light of purification filled the sky and the ancient divine sword, Purification Primordial, appeared. The moment the peerless divine weapon appeared, the great world was instantly divided into two. Fan Lingyue held the sword and slashed the divine moon. The shocking sword power shocked the Khanate saints. In the void, the Khanate saints looked at the woman in front of them, unable to suppress the waves in their hearts. This woman was actually so powerful. All along, they had thought that the most powerful person in the celestial realm was the Lord of the celestial realm. They didn't expect that apart from the Lord of the celestial realm, there was such a terrifying mortal realm saint. In the collapsed mountain range, Mo Lord's expression also became serious. His hands separated into yin and yang. The divine sun and the yin moon appeared at the same time. Immortal technique, sun and moon. The reappearance of the immortal technique was even more shocking. The sun and moon rose and illuminated the entire great world. In the human realm, in the 10 miles maple forest, Ning Chen, who was learning to read with Gue Gue, raised his head and looked at the sky. A strange look flashed across his eyes. Immortal spells? His master's strength was getting stronger and stronger. However, his opponent was that terrifying woman. A woman that even he didn't want to face. Father, am I right? Gue Gue raised her head and asked with a smile. Yes, Gue Gue wrote it really well. Ningchen calmed himself down and looked at the words written by Gue Gue in the snow. Receiving his father's praise, the smile on Sly Ghost's face became even brighter. He looked extremely happy. High up in the sky, the sun and moon in the sky, the immortal arts shook the world. In the void, Fan Lingyue stepped forward and turned into a stream of light, swinging his sword at Lord Mo, who was behind the sun and moon. The divine sun, yin moon, and divine moon followed him like shadows. It was as if they had a mind of their own, and they followed him closely. Fan Lingyue's figure flashed, evading the attacks of the sun and moon. 100 miles away, he stopped and focused. His left hand held the sword, and 3 huge green dragons appeared. The appearance of the raging dragons stirred up thousands of waves. Using their form as power, the world-cleansing law collided with the power of the sun and moon. With a loud bang, 2 dragons broke through the sun and moon. The last green dragon rushed out of the aftermath and directly bit Lord Mo, crashing into the ground. It was a shocking scene. After the raging dragons crashed into the ground, the earth within 1,000,000 miles collapsed. It was terrifying. In the collapsed ground, Lord Mo got up, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. In the void, Fan Lingyue looked at the old man who no longer had the demeanor of an immortal. He took a step in the air and had no intention of stopping. What are you waiting for? At this moment, Lord Mo spoke in a deep voice. The meticulous Lord Mo is finally willing to ask for help. As he spoke, a young man in white appeared in the void. The divine halo behind him was dazzling, and the pressure was extremely powerful. When the young man appeared, the expressions of all the saints in the celestial realm darkened. They looked at the white-robed man in the sky with a serious expression. I am Bai Wangji. I would like to learn from you. As he spoke, a folding fan appeared in Bai Wangji's hand. As he waved the folding fan, thunder rumbled in the sky. In the void, Fan Lingyue turned around and looked at the 12th Khanate saint who walked out of thin air. His expression became serious for the first time. This person was very strong. Although Khanate saints were not weak, there was still a gap in strength. The strongest ones, such as the Underworld King and the Eighth Heaven Gods, had already surpassed the category of saints and were almost unshakable. Under the two supreme gods, there were several extremely powerful Khanate saints whose strength was far beyond ordinary saints. The white-robed man in front of him was undoubtedly one of them. A saint who controls thunder. In the celestial realm, the Dawn Moonhouse Master looked at the sky with a strange expression. The great Tao of thunder was the great Tao with the most shocking destructive power. The most difficult tribulation for living beings was the thunder tribulation. The white-robed man in front of him controlled thunder, so his strength must be extremely terrifying. In the sky above the celestial realm, Fan Lingyue and Bai Wangji looked at each other. An instant later, the two figures disappeared at the same time. Fast, so fast that it was difficult for the naked eye to see. The speed of thunder had already exceeded the limits of martial arts. Similarly, Fan Lingyue, whose body was shrouded in moonlight, was also extremely fast. His Tao cleansing sword cut through all obstacles and was invincible. The two exchanged 100 moves in the blink of an eye. Inside and outside the celestial realm, the saints and the 11 Khanate saints looked at this shocking battle, their expressions becoming more and more shocked. This woman can actually keep up with Bai Wangji's speed. And Khanate saint said solemnly that Bai Wangji can actually block Fan Lingyue's attack. In the celestial realm, the saints were also shocked. The power of Tao cleansing sword could be said to be invincible. That Khanate saint who controlled thunder could withstand 100 moves and not be at a disadvantage at all. His strength was indeed terrifying. Boom! In the sky above the celestial realm, the two saints fought. The aftermath of the great battle shook. Thunder and moonlight collided. The power of destruction and purification collided head-on, causing the sky to lose its color. In Bai Wangji's hand, the folding fan attracted thunder and turned the battle into a sea of thunder. The terrifying power was indescribable with words. On the other hand, Fan Lingyue, with a divine sword in hand, used speed to counter speed. She did not back down at all and faced the opponent's strongest move head-on. In the battle, the two saints collided. Blood splattered from Bai Wangji's right arm, dyeing his white robe red. Crazy woman. In the 10 Miles Maple Forest, Ningchen said softly while practicing calligraphy with Guege. There was obviously a better way, but that woman just had to defeat her opponent in his strongest field. She was really not likable. However, Fan Lingyue had the ability to do so. She thought that she had a chance to win by not competing with Fan Lingyue. Wrong, her martial strength was equally shocking. She thought that she could win by avoiding a confrontation with her martial strength. Wrong again, her attainments in array formations were equally unparalleled. She thought that she had to be careful of her array formations. Wrong again. Her ability to deduce fate and change the situation of the world was also impossible to guard against. The only one in the world, Fan Lingyue. As long as she was alive, no one in the celestial realm could defeat her. Chapter 1628. In the sky above, Fan Lingyue and the saint who controlled lightning exchanged blows. The competition between speed and speed caused the collapse of time. The speed of lightning was unbelievably fast. Facing Bai Wangji, who had astonishing speed and destructive power, Fan Lingyue did not dodge at all. Instead, he faced him head-on, competing with speed and destructive power. After exchanging 100 moves, it was difficult to determine the victor between the two. Just when the various sages thought that the two of them were evenly matched, a shocking collision sound rang out in the battle. Blood spurted out from Bai Wangji's right arm, dyeing his white robes red. Being injured for the first time, Bai Wangji flew 100 steps away. Looking at the sword wound on his right arm, his face was cold. It's been 100,000 years. Saint of the mortal realm, you are the first one to injure me. Bai Wangji said coldly, waving the fan in his hand. Suddenly, thunder filled the sky, turning into a huge beast that swallowed forward. Fan Lingyue's expression was indifferent. He stepped and swam, avoiding the beast. In a flash, he was in front of Bai Wangji again. Pure beginning waved, the moon-white brilliance filled the air, slashing down. Bai Wangji's face darkened. He opened the fan in his hand and blocked the power of the divine sword. A strong impact spread out. In the battle, heaven and earth turned into nothingness, unable to bear this terrifying destructive power. With the cultivation of the Saint Realm, all moves seemed so pale. Only the most fundamental laws of the battle could determine the winner and the loser. A saint who controlled lightning had combat power that surpassed most of the Khanate saints, infinitely close to the realm of Nether King and Eighth Heaven deity. However, facing Fan Lingyue who had returned from 100 reincarnations, it was still difficult for him to gain the upper hand. Boom! In the battle, pure beginning and the fan of lightning continued to clash. Wave after wave of aftershocks spread out, spreading to the entire great world. In the immortal realm, the saints watched the battle in the sky, their expressions more and more shocked. Too strong, the combat power of these two had already surpassed the saints. The number one in the divine prefecture is really terrifying. In front of the saints, Mu Qianshang looked at the sky and said, "No wonder Jiming had such a high evaluation of her. Now that I see it with my own eyes, I know that Jiming's evaluation is not wrong. How can a woman who can make Jiming suffer so many times be simple?" The Dawn Moonhouse master smiled and said, "You and I both know Marquis Jiming's character. He will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, this woman convinced him wholeheartedly. It can be seen that Jiming suffered a great loss at her hands." Beside him, Qing Ning quietly looked at the horizon without saying a word. Only those who had truly witnessed Fan Lingyue's strength would be able to understand how terrifying this woman was. Back then, if it wasn't for the fact that her lifespan was nearing its end, Grand Xia might have already perished. Now that Fan Lingyue had come back to life, they should rejoice. This time around, Fan Lingyue was no longer their enemy. Boom! While the saints of the mortal realm were lamenting, in the void, a terrifying impact force erupted once again. In the battle, Bai Wangji was once again forced back, the corners of his mouth turning red. On the opposite side, on the sword in Fan Lingyue's hand, drops of blood dripped down. It was abnormally glaring. After an astonishing battle, the sage who controlled lightning gradually fell into a disadvantageous position, and it was obvious that he was about to lose. Outside the battle, Emo Master and Darkness Master glanced at each other and no longer chose to observe. They began circulating their Saint Qi, preparing to take action. In the immortal domain, the saints of the mortal world sensed this, killing intent flashing past their faces. In front of all the saints, the female sovereign stepped forward, instantly arriving in the skies above the celestial realm. "Your opponent is me." As she spoke, demonic qi surged around female supreme, and the 9 underworlds heaven-devouring demon scripture reappeared. The demonic qi in the world gathered into one, and raging waves swept through the 9 heavens. Demon Master and Darkness Master's expressions turned serious. What a shocking demonic qi! It reminded them of the Supreme Nether King. "Female Supreme, you don't have to take action." At this moment in the battle, Fan Lingyue spoke. Her purification of absolute beginning swept across, and an incomparably surging moonlight spread out, its might shocking the heavens and earth. Sin of heaven! An unprecedented might appeared with a bang. With Fan Lingyue as the center, the power of purification of absolute beginning spread rapidly, devouring the heavens and earth. Inside and outside the battle, the innate saints felt this powerful pressure, and their expressions all changed. The moonlight filled the sky, dazzling and eye-catching. In the center of the moonlight, Fan Lingyue rose into the air, her fine black hair dancing in the wind, like a goddess of absolute beginning descending to the mortal world. The terrifying aura made one shudder. Retreat or die. A cold and emotionless warning. The threat was not concealed at all. Fan Lingyue looked at the 12 innate saints in front of her, and her aura was raised to the limit. In the battle, Bai Wang snorted coldly, and his figure flashed past, attacking again. Boom! Lightning and moonlight clashed, and a waterfall of blood splattered. Bai Wangji's figure was directly sent flying, and his blood dyed the blue sky. In the void, the 11 innate saints, including Darkness Master and Mo Master, looked at each other and did not dare to stay any longer. Retreat! With a command, the saints retreated together, and in the dazzling golden light, the saints disappeared one after another. In the celestial domain, Fan Lingyue looked at the retreating saints and did not chase after them. Her aura gradually retracted. In the celestial domain, the saints of the mortal world all heaved a sigh of relief. They finally retreated. Fan Lingyue descended from the sky and said calmly, "Everyone, go back and continue to strengthen the celestial domain." The saints of the mortal world nodded and left. After the saints left, a trace of blood silently dripped from the corner of Fan Lingyue's mouth. It was so dazzling. Facing the strongest innate saint, even someone as strong as Fan Lingyue was injured quite badly. Qin Ning stepped forward and said softly, "Why force yourself?" Establishing dominance. Fan Lingyue said calmly, "The growth of the celestial domain still needs time, and it can't withstand the endless harassment of these innate saints." "It's been hard on you." Qin Ning sighed softly. "It's no problem, I just need to rest for a few days." Fan Lingyue looked at the mortal world and said, "I can feel that his strength is also constantly increasing. Perhaps it won't be long before he can summon the third Great Dao Bridge." In the 10 miles maple forest, Ningchen raised his head and looked at the horizon. As if he felt the gaze from the celestial domain, a smile appeared on his face. Fortunately, she was here, so he could leave the celestial domain without worry. "Father, hurry up." In front, Gue turned around and urged, "It's time to sweep the Empress tomb." "'Kay, I'm coming." Ningchen came back to his senses and stepped forward. In front of the tomb, two figures, one big and one small, seriously swept the dust of Zhang Xuan's tomb. 100 years was like a day, and they never stopped. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. 1,000 years in the mortal world was so long. 1,000 years was enough to change everything. The immortal Great Xia, after 1,000 years, began to decline. Generation after generation of martial marquises fought bloody battles, but they still could not change the rapid decline of this immortal dynasty. The powerful countries from the north and the west joined forces, and the cavalry stepped into the territory of the Great Xia, leaving the Great Xia devastated. The flames of war burned every inch of the Great Xia's territory. The immortal Great Xia finally fell. And in the 10 miles maple forest, Ning Chen and Gue never walked out of the forest. They did not interfere with the affairs of the mortal world. There was no absolute immortality in the world. It was already a miracle that the Great Xia could survive until now. Finally, the cavalry from the north forced their way to the imperial city of the Great Xia. Chapter 1629. Great Xia, Fire Beacon City. The allied forces of the 7 surrounding countries were besieging, especially the cavalry of the north. In the imperial city of Great Xia, the last Marquis stood guard. His battle clothes were stained with blood. In the imperial city, the common people were also in despair. The once glorious dynasty had fallen overnight, and there was no chance for it to rise again. When the Marquis of Triumph could not return in triumph, the immortal dynasty had also reached its end. On the city wall, the current Marquis of Triumph looked in the direction of 10 miles maple forest. For a long time, he was silent. In the end, he did not make a move. In 10 miles maple forest, Gue, who had just finished sweeping the grave for her grandson, looked up at her father and said, "Father, I want to eat tonghalu." Hearing this, Ningchen nodded and said, "Okay, father will take you to buy it." The two of them moved and walked towards the imperial city together. In the imperial city of Great Xia, the city gate was closed. The armies of the 7 countries had surrounded the city. In front of the north gate, there were 50,000 cavalry of the northern herders. At this moment, 2 figures, one big and one small, walked over from the north gate. Their pace was neither fast nor slow, and they seemed out of place in this war of life and death. In front of the 50,000 cavalry, a general in green armor frowned when he saw the newcomers. "Bring the bow." The general in green armor said coldly. Yes. A soldier handed over a hard bow and a quiver of arrows. The general in green armor drew the bow, and the arrow pierced through the air. The arrow of a warrior was majestic. Wherever the arrow passed, dust and sand would roll up like a hurricane, shocking the world. The 50,000 cavalry stared at the arrow with excitement in their eyes. However, the gazes of the 50,000 soldiers of the north changed. When the shocking arrow approached the two figures in the distance, it directly dissipated. The dust and sand in the air dissipated, and it did not cause any waves. This shocking scene shocked the 50,000 cavalry. Their general and Marquis of Triumph of Great Xia were the strongest warriors of the divine Great Land. Under this arrow, they could not even touch the body of that young man. Under the north gate of Great Xia, Ningchen led Gui and walked over. Looking at the closed city gate, he did not stop walking. Clouds gathered below the two of them. They soared into the air and walked to the top of the city. Marquis of Triumph recovered from his shock and bowed respectfully. Gui wants to eat tonghu. Sorry to disturb you. Ningchen said apologetically. Marquis Triumphant Return looked at the little boy beside Marquis Jiming, hesitated for a moment, and then looked away and said respectfully, Marquis, please take action and save Great Xia from this crisis. Ningchen turned around and looked at the allied army of the 7 empires below the Grand Xia royal city. He calmly said, back then, I also encountered a similar situation. However, things are different now. The current Grand Xia is already too rotten. Hearing this, Marquis Victorious Return's eyes were filled with despair. Protecting the Grand Xia is the responsibility of Marquis Wu. Marquis Triumphant Return, I'll leave it to you. Ningchen said something that seemed very irresponsible. Then he led Gui down the stairs. In the royal capital of Grand Xia, it was now abnormally desolate. The destruction of Grand Xia was imminent, and the commoners were in a state of panic. Not to mention selling candied haws, even the common cloth and grain stores on both sides of the streets had already closed their doors. War had changed too many things. The once prosperous empire had completely fallen into the flames of war. Even the last imperial city was in a precarious state. Extreme prosperity leads to decline. This was an eternal truth. It was already an incredible miracle that Great Xia had survived until now. Perhaps it was Jiming and the others' reward for saving the world. The heavens allowed Great Xia to survive until today. However, this glory had finally come to an end. In the desolate royal capital of Grand Xia, Ningchen and Gui walked through all the streets, big and small, but still couldn't find a stall selling tonghu. They couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Uncle, do you know where I can buy tonghu? Ningchen pulled an old man who was walking in a hurry and asked. The old man stopped and looked at the two people in front of him. He said impatiently, what kind of world is this? Where can you find such things? Uncle, please forgive us. The child wants to eat. As a parent, I don't want to wrong the child. Ningchen said apologetically. The old man sighed and said, follow me. After that, the old man led the way to the end of the street. Ningchen held Gui's hand and followed. At the end of the street, in front of a simple house, the three of them stopped. The old man opened the door and walked to the stove. He lit some dry wood and put some sugar into the pot, starting to boil soup. Ningchen stood at the side, watching and learning attentively. He knew that it would be a long time before he could buy tonghu in this city. Not long after, the old man finished boiling the sugar. He skewered a few hawthorns and dipped them in the sugar juice. A tonghu skewer was done. Ningchen and Gui were considered lucky. The old man they met used to sell tonghu and tonghu for a living. It was easy for him to do this. Thank you. Ningchen took the tonghu, thanked the old man, and handed it to Gui. Thank you, father. Gui's little face showed a happy smile as she ate the tonghu. Young man, go home soon. This world is chaotic. Don't run around outside. The old man looked at the white-haired young man and sighed. Okay, we'll go back soon. Ningchen nodded. At the side, Gui happily ate the tonghu, her little face full of satisfaction. Seeing the smile on the child's face, The old man's expression became more complicated. The heavens are blind. We finally had some good days and now there's a war. Maybe in a few days we'll all become slaves. The old man sighed again. Why were these days so hard? Ningchen was silent and did not answer. Not long after, Gui Gui finished eating the tanghu. Ningchen thanked the old man again and left with Gui Gui. On the desolate streets, there were almost no pedestrians. Occasionally, there would be one or two, but they were all in a hurry and did not dare to stay outside. The familiar situation was exactly the same as when Great Xia was besieged. The only difference was that the times had changed. Outside the imperial city of Great Xia, the Seven Countries Alliance army had begun to attack the city. On the city wall, the imperial guards led by Marquis Kaixin defended the city with all their might. For their faith, they would rather die than retreat. In the city, Ningchen held Gui Gui's hand and walked silently, not saying a word. Gui Gui seemed to feel her father's mood and obediently did not disturb him. Just as Great Xia was on the brink of life and death, in the east of Great Xia, in the completely abandoned imperial city, a beautiful figure in white walked over. Her hair had long turned white. After 10,000 years, Mu Qingxue returned again. However, everything had changed. Turning into a Taishang, Mu Qingxue's eyes no longer had a trace of human emotions. With every step he took, the ground was covered in frost. Mu Qingxue returned. In the polar region of the north, in the heavenly music parlor, the master of the heavenly music parlor opened her eyes and looked to the east. Mu Qingxue had returned. Heaven's will. In this era, he and she had returned to the beginning of everything. However, this time, would the outcome be different? Chapter 1630. In the Grand Xia Imperial City, an army was pressing down on them. At this moment, no one could change the situation. In the city, Ningchen brought Gui Gui forward to see the final glory of Great Xia. In the east of the Great Xia dynasty, Mu Qingxue returned to the desolate city. Looking at the desolate city that had become a thing of the past, there was not a single ripple in his calm eyes. Perhaps it was because of his memories, but after 10,000 years, Mu Qingxue still came back. After a long while, Mu Qingxue turned around and looked in the direction of the royal city of the Grand Xia. Venerable Immortal? At the same time, in the royal capital of Grand Xia, Ningchen sensed something and turned his gaze towards the east. Their gazes collided, their thoughts unknown. After a while, Mu Qingxue's figure disappeared into thin air from the desolation city. In the royal capital of Grand Xia, on a desolate street, a beautiful figure appeared. The aura of time emanating from her was unconcealable. At the front, Ningchen held Gui Gui's hand as he looked at the woman who had appeared in front of him. A complicated light flashed through the depths of his eyes. She had finally become a saint. This meant that she was no longer Mu Qingxue, but one of the 49 Grand Daos, the Grand Oblivion Dao. Similarly, Mu Qingxue was also looking at the master of the ancient era's immortal domain before him. After a long time, he calmly said, "Long time no see." "Long time no see," Ningchen replied softly. Reincarnation after reincarnation, with different standpoints, these two people who had been at each other's throats for many lifetimes were connected by fate. Now that they met again, their feelings of gratitude and resentment were complicated. Killing each other here? Mu Qingxue asked. Ningchen looked at the dilapidated imperial city of the Grand Xia and shook his head gently. Let's wait. Mu Qingxue nodded. He wasn't in a hurry. Ningchen left the imperial city of the Grand Xia dynasty with Gi. Mu Qingxue followed behind and headed towards the 10-mile maple forest. Behind the three of them, the allied forces of the Seven Nations had finally breached the imperial city of the Grand Xia. Marquis Triumphant Xian had died in battle, and the imperial city of the Grand Xia had been burned to the ground. Raging flames dyed the sky red. The winner was king while the loser was in the wrong. It was cruel. Ningchen turned his back to the imperial city and walked forward. He didn't look back at all. Behind him, Mu Qingxue looked at the man in front of him. There was not a single ripple in his cold eyes. He was sometimes more ruthless than she, for he was too rational to be affected by emotion. Grand Xia, which he had protected for half his life, was about to be destroyed. Yet, he wasn't willing to interfere. Such rationality was truly terrifying. The three of them walked through the 10 miles maple forest. Ning Chen went into the house to prepare tea for the guests. Gui Gui looked curiously at her sister in front of her, her big eyes unblinking. Your child? Mu Qingxue looked at Gui Gui and asked. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, Gui is the child of the Netherlord and I. The Netherlord? Hearing this, a strange look flashed across Mu Qingxue's eyes as he said, Fate makes fools of people. The supreme of the immortal region and the saints of the various heavens had always been irreconcilable. Who would have thought that she would have a child with the Netherlord? Please verify. Ning Chen served the tea and said politely, Thank you. Mu Qingxue took the tea and replied. The tea was very hot, but when it reached Mu Qingxue's hands, it quickly cooled down. When the tea entered his mouth, there was a slight bitterness. After the bitterness, there was a hint of sweetness, leaving a rich aftertaste. Only you came back? Mu Qingxue took a sip of tea and asked. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, They all stayed in above heavens. It's rare to see you stop, Mu Qingxue said. A smile appeared on Ning Chen's face as he said, Now that there are so many powerhouses in the mortal realm, I believe in them. Do you really think you can kill all the saints of the various heavens? Mu Qingxue continued to ask. Where there is a will, there is a way, Ning Chen replied. Your stubbornness hasn't changed at all. Mu Qingxue's expression turned cold as he said indifferently. In life, there must always be something that one perseveres in, Ning Chen replied softly. Mu Qingxue put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the burning Great Xia's imperial city. He said, Back then, this was also the place that you risked your life to protect. Why are you ignoring it now? Ning Chen was silent and did not reply. Where's your sword? Mu Qingxue did not continue to question him. He glanced at the wooden house and asked. I left it in the immortal region. Ning Chen answered truthfully. Without your sword, do you think you're a match for me? Mu Qingxue said indifferently. Perhaps not, Ning Chen replied. I won't show mercy, Mu Qingxue said indifferently. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, There's no need to show mercy. Mu Qingxue stood up and walked out of the wooden house. In the 10-mile maple forest, Mu Qingxue walked out and Ning Chen followed behind him. The red maple leaves in the sky were as red as fire. Mu Qingxue was surrounded by cold air and the small world was separated from the big world. Standing in the small world, Ning Chen stared at the girl in front of him. He clenched his right hand and the maple leaves in the sky gathered and turned into a red maple sword. Please. Mu Qingxue said calmly. Please. Ning Chen replied softly without any hostility in his words. However, his battle intent rose. At the same time, Mu Qingxue's killing intent rose. The battle was about to begin. At this moment, a maple leaf fell into the small world and blocked their vision for a moment. The two moved at the same time. The Taishang sword was unsheathed and the sword radiance was dazzling. The sword radiance was shocking and ruthless. The maple sword in Ning Chen's hand blocked the radiance of the Taishang sword with a loud boom. After the collision, Mu Qingxue disappeared instantly and appeared behind Ji Ming before he could react. The speed of the travel scroll was unparalleled in the world. Mu Qingxue had already done his best at the beginning of the battle. As the Taishang sword slashed down, Ji Ming's figure also disappeared at an unbelievable speed. The phoenix's extreme speed was beyond the limit. In the blink of an eye, the maple sword slashed down. Boom! The swords clashed again and the airwaves surged. The entire small world shook violently and lost its color. The collision of extreme speed was so fast that even time and space were distorted. The plain clothes and the white clothes kept clashing in the small world. They were so fast that their figures could barely be seen. After returning to the Saint Realm, the Taishang sword was even more powerful than the Taichu sword. Facing the reborn Taishang sword, Ning Chen didn't dare to be careless and used all his strength. Arg! Suddenly, Ning Chen's vision blurred. A sword pierced through his chest and blood dyed his plain clothes red. The The phoenix that hadn't entered the Saint Realm lost in the battle of speed. The difference couldn't be made up. The drops of blood were so dazzling. The two faced each other. They had known each other for countless years, but the swords in their hands didn't show any mercy. After severely injuring his opponent, Mu Qingshue's body glowed with white light and he flew into the sky. At that moment, the sword radiance in the sky gathered and turned into two huge sword wings. The powerful aura made people shudder. In the blink of an eye, Mu Qingshue's wings flapped and he disappeared in the sky. He tore through time and space at an even more terrifying speed and came before Zhi Ming. As the danger approached, the phoenix rose around Ning Chen. After the phoenix wings appeared, he quickly retreated. However, he was still one step too late. The Taishang sword pierced into Zhi Ming's heart meridians mercilessly and brought out a glaring red waterfall. Chapter 1631. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin. The 10 miles maple forest was an invisible small world. Mu Qingxue, who had mastered the travel scroll, was unparalleled in speed and severely injured the knowing destiny state. The Taishang supreme sword pierced through Ning Chen's chest. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he tried to stabilize himself. The phoenix fire in the sky could not stop the sword radiance. In the sky, Mu Qingshue's sword wings vibrated. His speed was unbelievably fast. The strongest Taishang had gone through hundreds of tribulations and reached his current state. He was higher than the saints and was close to the God of Gods. Facing such a powerful opponent, the knowing destiny state without a sword was at a disadvantage and was severely injured. In the small world, the maple leaves flew in. They were red like blood. From the beginning to now, after hundreds of reincarnations, it's time to end all grudges. The Taishang supreme sword in Mu Qingshue's hand glowed. He moved. There was no time to react. Not even divine consciousness could detect it. It was so fast that even time could not record it. The wind stopped and the clouds stopped. Out of a martial artist's instinct, Ning Chen brandished his sword to block. However, his move was ultimately restricted by his opponent. Ugh! The two swords clashed. The horrifying power of the sword attacked. Ning Chen groaned and took a few steps back. Blood splattered and dyed the leaves on the ground red. The maple was red, but the blood was even redder. The tilting of the battle was expected. How could the knowing destiny state without a sword change his fate when facing the Taishang Supreme who had gone through hundreds of reincarnations? The fated battle was unavoidable. Neither of them held back. It was a battle of life and death. Blood dripped from the maple sword. Their bodies were injured, but it was impossible for the saints to be completely unaffected. The phoenix fire rose and Ning Chen's injuries were quickly healed. However, the sword aura came again. Boom! The sword was fast, but the sword was even faster. In the battle of speed, Ning Chen was at a disadvantage for the first time in 10,000 years. Again and again, he was left with more serious injuries. The knowing destiny state is lucky to see such extreme speed. It turned out that there was such a speed above speed. Ning Chen stopped and focused. The phoenix flames around him soared. The phoenix appeared and its cry pierced the sky. Above Ning Chen, a huge shadow of the phoenix appeared. The gods of the ancient world had fallen in the beginning, but their bloodline had never disappeared. Ha! Ning Chen let out a long shout. His divine essence rushed to the top of his head, and his chi pierced through yin and yang. His fluttering white hair was so dazzling. Blood energy surged around Ning Chen's body as he transformed into the phantom of a phoenix. He wanted to revive the ancestral phoenix. In the battle, Mu Qingshue's expression turned serious. Taishang indifference, one sort of wind soul. Facing such a situation, Mu Qingxue used the Taishang emotionless ultimate technique for the first time. The raging wind blew and a sword appeared in the wind. Mu Qingxue stood in the raging wind and slashed down with his sword. The wind spirit sword was indestructible. Under the shadow of the ancestral phoenix, Ning Chen waved his sword to block. The maple sword was destroyed, and the wind spirit sword chi penetrated through his body. A scarlet waterfall sprinkled down on the small world, and it was exceptionally dazzling. Ning Chen's white clothes were dyed red with blood. He staggered. His body's recovery speed couldn't keep up with the speed of destruction. In the void, the ancestral phoenix cried out in grief. Its enormous wings flapped, illusory and difficult to distinguish. The powerful Taishang was ruthless and cold. Every move was full of murderous intent. In the immortal palace in the immortal region, the four immortal swords trembled as if they sensed the danger of their master. However, they were sealed in wooden sheaths and couldn't come out. In front of the immortal palace, Fan Lingyue sensed the abnormal movement of the immortal swords. Her expression turned serious as she looked at the human world. He was in danger. He's in danger. Demonic chi surged as Nu Chang appeared. Looking at the four immortal swords in the immortal palace, she said in a low voice, "Unseal the immortal swords." "No need." Fan Lingyue shook her head and said calmly, "Since he sealed the four immortal slaying swords, he must have his reasons. We can't interfere with his decision." "But the immortal swords are warning him. He must be in danger," Nu Chang said seriously. Fan Lingyue was silent. After a while, she said, "Since he has made a choice, he can only bear the consequences." Her calm and ruthless words were just like the Northern Meng military advisor who slaughtered millions of soldiers 10,000 years ago. She was never swayed by emotions. Nu Chang's eyes darkened. Looking at the determined woman in front of her, she didn't say anything. She had to admit that the woman in front of her and Ji Ming were both lunatics. Not only were they ruthless to others, they were even more ruthless to themselves. In the small world of the 10 Miles Maple Forest, Ning Chen was injured. His body was on the verge of collapse. In the void, the phantom of the ancestral phoenix wailed sorrowfully. However, it couldn't return to its ancestral state. Mu Qingxue looked at the phantom of the ancestral phoenix in the void. He waved the divine sword in his hand. The sword condensed into a gust of wind that whistled. In the face of danger, a blood-stained silhouette in the small world flashed and blocked the phantom of the ancestral phoenix. With a loud rumble, blood spurted out from Ning Chen's body. His body couldn't hold on any longer and started to collapse. Blood spilled in every corner of the small world. It was bleak and beautiful. Mu Qingxue looked at this scene. After a while, his expression suddenly darkened. His strength shouldn't be limited to this. Even if he lost his sword, he should still have 2 clones. In the wooden house in front of the 10 Miles Maple Forest, a white-haired silhouette in plain clothes looked up at the maple forest. "Father, what are you looking at?" Gui Gui, who was practicing writing, asked in confusion. "Nothing." Ning Chen retracted his gaze and looked at the words written by Gui. He said softly, "Continue writing." Gui nodded and replied obediently. Outside the wooden house, a black-haired silhouette in black clothes leaned against the wooden house and looked at the maple forest quietly. His demonic chi was restrained, but he was equally powerful. In the 10 Miles Maple Forest, the body of the phoenix that was fighting alone in the small world collapsed. Blood spilled all over the sky. In the next moment, a terrifying divine flame ignited in the void. Every drop of blood turned into the most blazing divine flame, burning the small world. The sudden change made Mu Qingxue's expression darken. He clenched his fists. Raging waves roared and snow filled the sky, trying to extinguish the flames of the phoenix's nirvana. However, since the nirvana had begun, how could it end so easily? The formless will was illusory. The small world changed, turning into a world of flames. In the surging divine flames, the ancestral phoenix bathed in flames and its cries shook the sky. It broke through the limit. The most shocking scene was that a red-haired silhouette in red clothes appeared out of thin air amidst the cries of the phoenix. Its divinity was shocking. The phoenix ancestral awakening, the body of the Tao. In the large world, the third great Tao bridge appeared and quickly solidified. At this moment, in the various worlds, the saints felt something and looked at the human world. It's a success. In the immortal region, in front of the immortal palace in the east, Nu Chang recovered from the shock and said. Fan Lingyue nodded. His expression was calm without any ripples. It was good that he didn't die. In the 10 miles maple forest, in the burning small world, the red-haired phoenix body walked out. Looking at the white-haired silhouette in the void, it said, "I've kept you waiting." Before it finished, the red-haired silhouette disappeared instantly. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the Grand Supreme. The phoenix body held the air and the maple leaves in the sky formed a sword. With a slash, the world changed. Chapter 1632. In the 10 miles maple forest, the red maple leaves drifted in the air. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. In the small world where the divine flames were burning, the phoenix achieved Tao and completely reverted to its ancestry. The chaotic divine demon that achieved Taichu had fallen in the Taichu divinity war. Its bloodline was scattered in the mortal world, eternal and immortal. However, after countless years, the ancestor phoenix finally reappeared in the mortal world. The divine flames burned the sky and boiled the sea. Its power was so terrifying that it was shocking. In the flames, a red-haired and red-clothed figure walked out. With one step, it crossed the river of time and came before the Grand Supreme. The earth-shattering strike was so fast that it could be destroyed in an instant. The maple sword fell, and blood was everywhere. With the ear-piercing sound of clothes tearing, blood spurted out of Mu Qingshue's left shoulder. Although he managed to avoid being hit in the vital parts at the last moment, he was still injured. It was an indescribable strike. Even the Grand Supreme who had achieved Tao was at a disadvantage in terms of speed. The ancestor phoenix that was born with heaven and earth was an extremely powerful existence even among the chaotic divine demons. It was not any slower than the most powerful saints in the world. Ningchen did not hold back at all. He condensed vitality with his fingers and divine flames with his sword. Suddenly, raging divine flames rose, and the fear of burning the sky engulfed the entire small world. In the divine flames, the sword qi pierced through the air and tried to kill the Grand Supreme. Mu Qingxue blocked the strike with his sword. With a loud tremor, the corner of his mouth turned red and he took a few steps back. The phoenix that had reverted to its ancestry was almost unstoppable. Mu Qingxue stopped moving. Strange lights surrounded him and healed his injuries. Grand Supreme Indifference Abyss. Knowing that his opponent had changed, Mu Qingxue stopped hiding. He shouted and strange lights spread out from his body. Grand Supreme Indifference was the most terrifying cultivation technique since ancient times. It was both martial arts and rules. Only the Grand Supreme could control it. The Grand Supreme showed his power. Suddenly, the small world was filled with boundless darkness. The small world became heavy and suppressed all the rules within. The shocking power suppressed the divine flames and turned the tide of the battle. In the void, the red-clothed and red-haired knowing destiny stood quietly and felt the change in the rules of heaven and earth. The speed of heaven and earth was the same, but there was a difference between yin and yang. In the dark small world, the heaven and earth were as cold as the abyss. The small world started to change. Mu Qingshue's body moved, the huge sword wings on his back flapped, and his speed increased again. Ningchen took a step forward. Behind him, divine flames curled up and transformed into a pair of gigantic phoenix wings. The phoenix wings flapped, and his speed also reached the limit. Boom! The phoenix and Taishang clashed. The power of extreme yin and extreme yang clashed, splitting the world in half. In the Tenli maple forest, the small world could no longer suppress the shockwaves from the battle between the two. The shockwaves spread out in all directions. Right at this time, in front of Tenli maple forest, two great Tao bridges appeared. The main body and the demonic body appeared, stabilizing the shockwaves. In the next moment, two streams of intertwining light soared into the sky from the 10 miles maple forest, flying into the starry sky. In front of the 10-mile maple forest, in front of the wooden house, a white-haired figure in plain clothes walked out. He looked at the horizon, and a light flashed in his eyes. Mu Qingshue's strength had improved again. The outcome of this battle would not be decided so easily. You don't plan to make a move? Don't tell me you're soft-hearted. She's a Grand Supreme, and she's also a Khanate saint. Don't forget the hatred of 100 lifetimes just because of a lifetime of fate. I know what to do. Ningchen looked at the sky and said indifferently, compared to Grand Supreme, we have more important things to do. It's difficult if Ghost Girl doesn't wake up. The demonic body said seriously, Yama Lord is the most accomplished person in the world when it comes to divine souls. Her Tao laws were damaged by Ming Ming, and it'll take a long time to recover. But what we lack most now is time, Ningchen replied. The demonic body fell silent and did not say anything else. In their plan, Ghost Girl was the most indispensable person. Only Yama Lord of the Underworld understood divine souls the best. However, Ghost Girl had not woken up for a long time, which made it difficult for their plan to be carried out. In the starry sky, 2 streams of light, one red and one white, flew past between the big stars. They collided again, and their power was extremely shocking. Borrowing sword from the heavens. When the battle reached its climax, the phoenix body stood still and shouted. She controlled the stars to form a sword, and the 9 stars were connected like pearls. The majestic action was shocking. In the starry sky, the 9 big stars turned into heavenly swords and flew past. Blazing divine flames surrounded them, destroying everything in their path. On the opposite side, Mu Qingxue saw this and turned the Grand Supreme Divine Sword in his hand. Its sharp edge soared into the sky, and 1,000,000 miles of sword light spread across the starry sky. Boom! In the most extreme of collisions, the 2 forces collided again, shattering stars one after another and destroying star regions one after another. The Sage Realm was indescribably powerful. Every move had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. The Grand Supreme and the Chaos Ancestor Phoenix competed at extreme speed, and it was hard to tell who was better. The intense battle gradually evolved into a long battle that lasted for 1,000 days. They fought until the sky lost its color. After the Grand Supreme and the Phoenix left the 10-mile maple forest, the forest returned to peace. Ningchen continued to teach Ghost Girl how to read every day, and he would visit Jiangsuan's grave every season. Ghost Girl was slowly growing up. Although the process was very long, Ningchen saw it clearly. Perhaps the greatest joy in the world was to be able to watch one's children grow up slowly. In the past 1,000 years, Ningchen stopped and focused on accompanying Ghost Girl to grow up. Ghost Girl, it's time to come back and learn how to read. Day after day passed. After an unknown number of days, the sun once again shone brightly in the sky. Ningchen looked at the ghosts playing outside and said, "Let's go." Steady. Ghost Girl heard and put down the small wooden sword in her hand and ran back. Ningchen squatted down and wiped the dirt off Ghost Girl's face. Then he held Ghost Girl's little hand and walked back into the house. At this moment, in the 10-mile maple forest, a red-haired figure in red appeared with divine flames. The phoenix body that had returned was covered in blood, and the aura in her body was extremely messy. It showed that she had gone through a fierce battle. In front of the wooden house, demonic aura surged. The demon body walked out and looked at the phoenix body. "Your injuries are not light. I can still hold on, but I need time to recuperate," the phoenix body said tiredly. "What about the Grand Supreme? Did you kill her?" the demon body asked lightly. The phoenix body shook her head and said calmly, "I won by half a move, but it was not enough to take her life. However, her great path bridge was broken by me. Even if she did not die, she would be disabled." Hearing this, the demon body's deep eyes flashed. If that was the case, the Grand Supreme was no more. In the wooden house, Ningchen, who was teaching Ghost Girl how to write, suddenly paused. He made a mistake. In the depths of the starry sky, a flowing light flew by, and the blood all over his body dyed his white clothes red. With a bang, Mu Qingxue, who could no longer support himself, fell from the sky above a barren big star and crashed onto the big star. Knowing destiny was ruthless, he had broken the Grand Supreme's great path bridge with his own hands and destroyed her eternal foundation. Chapter 1633. At the end of the starry sky, on a barren primitive planet, Mu Qingxue, who was covered in blood, fell onto the planet and fainted. Mu Qingshue's physical body was severely injured after his bridge of the Great Tao was broken. If he hadn't experienced 100 reincarnations and improved his cultivation, he would have died already. However, even so, Mu Qingxue was at the end of his life. His life force kept leaking out and he could die at any time. The bridge of the Great Tao was the foundation of a saint. Even an immortal saint would die once his bridge of the Great Tao was destroyed. After a long time, Mu Qingxue woke up on the barren primitive planet. He struggled to get up and staggered forward. The blood-stained white dress was dazzling. Grand Supreme, who was once famous in the absolute beginning, was about to die. However, Mu Qingxue didn't want to give up. He supported his severely injured body and staggered forward step by step. Born with the heaven and earth, Grand Supreme reached the absolute beginning and experienced 100 reincarnations. Grand Supreme's strength was far beyond that of an ordinary saint. Because of this, he could barely hold on until now after his bridge of the Great Tao was broken by knowing destiny. Time passed day after day. Mu Qingshue's life force became weaker and weaker. Behind him, every inch of land he walked on was stained with blood. Finally, when Mu Qingxue couldn't hold on any longer, a blood-stained divine demon weapon counting platform appeared at the end of the life planet. The ancient and majestic divine demon weapon counting platform was 10,000 miles wide. Bloodstains could be seen everywhere on the platform. The remaining aura was still abnormally strong. The divine demon weapon counting platform that had existed for countless years was filled with cold death aura. Long ago in the absolute beginning era, an unknown battle between gods had taken place here. The bloodstains on the platform were left behind by the divine demons. As the strongest saint of the unruffled emotions path, Mu Qingxue had seen the existence of the divine demon weapon counting platform when he was ignorant. Now, when his life was in danger, he came to this former divine demon holy land. Chaotic divine demons were powerful existences that appeared before saints. Among the 49 great Taos, the true identities of the god of hell and level 8 gods were chaotic divine demons. They were so powerful that almost no one could rival them. In front of the divine demon weapon counting platform, Mu Qingxue couldn't hold on anymore and collapsed. Blood flowed out and spread in all directions. Just as the blood around Mu Qingxue spread to the divine demon weapon point, the entire divine demon weapon point suddenly came to life. The divine demon weapon point, which had been dormant for a long time, was activated. Gradually, the sound of war drums could be heard from the divine demon weapon counting platform. The sound of war drums could be heard all over the original star. The war drums sounded and the world was shocked. The moment the divine demon weapon selection platform was activated, the sages of the mortal realm and above heavens, including Ning Chen, felt something and their faces turned solemn. What a powerful aura! Boom! As the war drums sounded, an earth-shattering tremor spread out in the starry sky. The chaotic divine demon unleashed a terrifying power and attacked the seals around it. The heavenly Yu holy city had turned into an impregnable fortress that sealed the formidable existences of the absolute beginning era. However, since the seal wasn't complete, it couldn't trap the chaotic saints in it. Inside the seal, the sound of violent impacts rang out again and again. After each impact, the seal of Sky Transcendence sacred city would weaken a little. In front of the wooden house in the 10-mile maple forest, Ning Chen sensed something. He looked up into the starry sky, his expression grave. This ominous premonition indicated that something terrifying was about to be born. In front of the Eastern Immortal Palace in the Immortal Realm, Fan Lingyue also looked up into the starry sky. The war drums sounded ominous. It wasn't a good omen. The divine demon weapon selection platform. In the 8th heavens, the god who had survived since the absolute beginning era looked at the mortal realm with surprise in his eyes. As a chaotic divine demon, everyone knew about the existence of the divine demon weapon selection platform. During the absolute beginning era of chaos, the platform was stained with the blood of too many divine demons. He didn't expect to hear the war drums of the divine demon weapon selection platform again in this era. In the mortal realm, at the end of the starry sky, on the ancient original star, the divine demon weapon selection platform was activated. The war drums sounded one after another. Mu Qingxue, who had used his blood to activate the divine demon weapon selection platform, had already fainted in front of the platform. However, after forming a blood contract with the platform, Mu Qingxue's body that was about to collapse gradually stabilized. "Who is she?" Among the war drums, a gloomy and sharp voice sounded. It was indignant. A human from 10,000 eras later. A second ancient voice answered. "How can we entrust our lives to such a weak human? I can't accept it." A third voice sounded. It was sometimes far and sometimes close, sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It was her blood that awakened us. "Since her blood could awaken us, it means that she isn't weak," the ancient voice said again. "Stupid and lowly human. How can we, divine demons, submit to the will of a human?" A fourth voice sounded. It was angry. Don't. On the divine demon weapon selection platform, the war drums kept echoing. The wills of the divine demons were impacted, and their voices became terrified. "Lowly human, I can't accept it. This is fate." Among the war drums, the voices of the divine demons gradually weakened. The quarreling also disappeared. Time passed day after day in the 10 miles maple forest. The ripples from the end of the starry sky also calmed down. Ningchen stayed in the 10 miles maple forest and didn't leave. His peaceful days didn't change because of anything. On this day, outside the 10 miles maple forest, the squeaking sound of wheels running over the snow could be heard. It was ear-piercing. Soon, the carriage arrived at the 10 miles maple forest. A beautiful and noble woman walked out of the carriage. After the woman got out of the carriage, she also brought a young child out of the carriage. The former walked to the wooden house with the child. "Muya greets the great Xia Jiming Marquis." The woman walked to the front of the wooden house and bowed respectfully to the plain-clothed young man. At the side, the child also bowed, but his expression was slightly less respectful and slightly more curious. Ningchen walked out of the wooden house and looked at the two people in front of him. He asked calmly, "You are?" "Mu of the Golden Tribe Royal Court. This is my brother. He is the current Golden Saber Khan of the Golden Tribe Royal Court." Mu looked at the legendary figure in front of her and said respectfully. She knew that the man in front of her was like a god. He had the power to change everything. She couldn't be careless. "So you are the great and young Khans of the Golden Tribe Royal Court," Ningchen said softly. "Actually, you don't have to come. The fate of the great Xia dynasty is over. Its destruction is irreversible. I won't interfere." Muir heard this and her crescent-shaped eyes flashed. She said, "We have heard of the legend of the Jiming Marquis since we were young. Seeing you today, you really live up to your reputation." Ningchen smiled faintly and didn't want to say more. He said, "Go back. Treat the people better." After that, Ningchen didn't say anything else. He turned and walked into the wooden house. Chapter 1634. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years had passed in the 10 miles maple forest. Gui grew up a little. She learned how to read and write and practiced martial arts with her father. Ningchen taught Gui everything he knew, including the art of war, the way of the sword, and the way of being a human being. 1,000 years was out of reach for mortals, but it was just a moment for a saint of the great path. The lifespan of a saint was almost endless. Although Gui was not a saint, she was the only saint in the world. Even after 1,000 years, her appearance did not change much. She only grew a little. Like a 4 or 5-year-old child, Gui began to be a little naughty. She often played tricks on the little gourd and some small animals in the 10 miles maple forest. Sometimes she would run out and not come back until sunset. Ningchen gave Gui the greatest freedom. He only taught her some principles of being a human being and left the rest for her to experience. In the past 1,000 years, the Golden Palace, which had once destroyed the great Xia, had changed dynasties several times. The flames of war broke out again and again. Peace was always hard to come by. War and peace became the eternal cycle of the human world. It happened again and again, and no one could change it. From a teenager to a saint of the Great Path, the golden age that Ning Chen had always hoped to see did not come. As long as there were people, the war seemed to never stop. However, even so, Ning Chen did not give up. He waited for the golden age to come. Daddy Big Fish. At this time, outside the 10 miles maple forest, Gugui ran over with a fish about the same size as her. Her little face was full of excitement. Slow down. Don't fall. Ning Chen said with a gentle smile. Daddy, let's eat grilled fish tonight. Gugui said with an expectant look. Okay. Ning Chen nodded and said softly. Night fell. In front of the wooden house, a bonfire was lit. Ning Chen set up a rack over the bonfire and roasted fish for Gugui. Gugui sat aside obediently and looked at the big fish on the bonfire eagerly. She was so hungry that she was almost drooling. At this moment, in front of the bonfire, Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He looked at the maple forest not far away. The dark night sky obscured one's line of sight. In the maple forest, behind a big tree, a little girl in tattered clothes timidly hid there. She looked forward with longing in her eyes. Her stomach was rumbling with hunger, but she did not dare to go forward. It could be seen that the little girl had not eaten for a long time. Her clothes and shoes were damaged, and she looked very pitiful. Gugui, there's a little sister over there. She seems to be hungry. Can you ask her to come and eat fish with us? Ning Chen said in front of the bonfire. Hearing this, Gugui looked at the maple forest. When she saw the little girl, she nodded obediently and said, Okay. With that, Gugui got up and ran toward the maple forest. Not long after, Gugui pulled the little girl over. When the little girl saw Ning Chen, she was still a little scared and did not dare to speak. Ning Chen wasn't in a hurry. He just smiled at the little girl, tore off a small piece of fish, and handed it to the little girl. Go ahead. The aroma of the fish floated in the night wind. It was so tempting that the little girl who had been hungry for 2 days couldn't resist the temptation of food. She took the fish and stuffed it into her mouth. Don't worry, there's more here. Ning Chen tore another piece of fish from the bonfire and handed it to the little girl and said softly. The little girl took the fish and ate it. Little tears flowed down her little face. Sister, don't cry. On the side, Gugui stretched out her hand and wiped away the tears on the little girl's face. The little girl of unknown origin added a little change to this quiet night. Every time the little girl finished eating a piece of fish, Ning Chen handed her another piece until the little girl shook her head and said no. The fish that Gugui brought back was very big. The little girl didn't eat much. Most of the remaining fish was eaten by Gugui. The little girl watched Gugui finish the fish that was about the same size as them. The little girl couldn't hide the surprise on her little face. Daddy said that you need to eat more when you're growing. Gugui handed the last piece of fish to the little girl and said, I can't eat any more. The little girl shook her head gently and said, Gugui heard this and finished the last piece of fish. What's your name? After the two were full, Ning Chen wiped the grease off their hands and asked. Butterfly. The little girl answered timidly. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He quickly collected his thoughts and said, Where are your parents? Hearing the former's question, tears flowed out of the little girl's eyes again. She said, They died in the war. Ning Chen was silent. After a moment, he said, From now on, you will follow me. Are you willing? Butterfly heard this and was startled at first. She quickly recovered and nodded vigorously. I'm willing. Although the little girl was young, she also understood that in this chaotic world, it was impossible for her to survive alone. The benefactor in front of her was willing to take her in, which was equivalent to saving her life. Ning Chen showed a faint smile on his face and didn't say anything more. In the following days, a little girl appeared in 10 miles maple forest. Although she was only 4 or 5 years old, she was more sensible than Gugui. Butterfly knew how to be grateful and took care of the naughty Gugui in every possible way. Gugui was naturally happy to have a sister to take care of her. Every day, she followed behind Butterfly like a little tail. In the ordinary days, Ning Chen taught the two little guys to read and write. He also practiced martial arts and discussed Tao. However, in terms of Tao, Ning Chen taught the two different things. Gue Gue was extremely intelligent. She was able to learn everything at once, so Ning Chen taught her a little more. Comparatively speaking, Butterfly's talent in Dao was much worse. Ning Chen only taught her one type of Dao. Saber Dao. Even Ning Chen himself didn't know the pinnacle of Saber Dao. The only saber god in the world had already fallen. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or not, but Butterfly's understanding of Saber Dao was different from ordinary people. Her progress in Saber Dao could be described as rapid. Just 7 days before Butterfly's 10th birthday, Ning Chen left 10 miles maple forest for a day. When he returned, he brought back a black object. It was like a stone but not a stone, like iron but not iron. In the following 7 days, Ning Chen was very busy. Every time Gue Gue came to him, she would be reprimanded. Gue Gue felt wronged, but she didn't disturb him again. In these 7 days, Butterfly took care of Gue Gue alone. It took a lot of effort to make the wronged little guy happy. Finally, on the day of Butterfly's 10th birthday, a black saber appeared in Ning Chen's hand. The saber was long and narrow. The handle was gorgeous. It was like a butterfly blooming with sharpness. When Butterfly saw her birthday present, she couldn't hold back the tears in her eyes anymore. "Sister, let me see." Gue Gue looked at the saber. Her little face was filled with envy and expectation. Butterfly handed the saber to Gue Gue and said softly, "Gue Gue, you will have one in the future." Chapter 1635. 10 years had passed since Butterfly came to the 10 miles maple forest. Butterfly was 15 years old and had grown into a beautiful girl. In the past 10 years, Ning Chen taught Butterfly the knife technique, even more so than when he taught Ghost. In front of the 10 miles maple forest, Ghost sat on a stone stool and watched her sister and father fight. Ning Chen set up a restriction around 10 feet to prevent the impact from spreading outside. Inside the restriction, Ning Chen and Butterfly were fighting. Their knife was so sharp that it cut through the void. Their knife technique was amazing. In the past 10 years, Butterfly's knife technique had improved tremendously. In terms of knife technique, Ning Chen had nothing else to teach her. In the 10 feet restriction, the two figures kept crossing each other. Their sword fingers clashed with the knife radiance. Butterfly held the knife and attacked fiercely. Ning Chen used his fingers as a sword and attacked with defense. After dozens of rounds, Ning Chen would hold back his sharpness every time he attacked, just to draw out Butterfly's greatest potential. Boom! The knife and sword clashed. The radiance was dazzling and the waves were rolling. In the battle, they looked at each other. In the blink of an eye, their radiance rose again. "Sister is so powerful." In front of the wooden house, Ghost looked at the battle and said in a childish voice, "Immortal is so powerful too." Little Gourd replied, "Yes, father is so powerful too." Gue Gue agreed. The two little guys watched the battle. No one knew if they understood what was going on, but they kept talking. In the battle between the two was getting more and more intense. Butterfly's combat power was fully unleashed. Her body was graceful and graceful. Ning Chen taught Butterfly the best knife technique and body movement. In the past 10 years, Butterfly's cultivation had surpassed the martial artists of the same age. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged hundreds of blows. Ning Chen used his fingers to stop the knife radiance. He looked at the girl in front of him and said with satisfaction, "Okay, you can finish your apprenticeship now." Butterfly heard and her beautiful face showed a touch of joy. She bowed respectfully to the man in front of her and said, "Thank you for your teaching, master. Go on. You've been staying in 10 miles maple forest all these years. Although your saber techniques have improved very quickly, you've been lacking in tempering yourself. It's time for you to go out for a walk. Remember, no matter what happens, come back alive," Ning Chen said with a smile. Hudy was taken aback. She quickly regained her senses and bowed again. "Yes, Hudy will remember." An hour later, the butterfly left, leaving the 10 miles maple forest where it had stayed for 10 years. Gue Gue was very reluctant, but she could not stop Butterfly from leaving. When a fledgling grew up, it would eventually soar into the 9 heavens. In order for the butterfly to have a better future, having the butterfly leave the 10-mile maple forest was a necessary choice. Under the setting sun, Ning Chen looked at the disappearing figure of the butterfly with mixed feelings. Perhaps the Empress had felt the same way when she looked at his back. However, the difference was that the butterfly left for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, Ning Chen and Gui Gui waited in the 10-mile maple forest. Although they missed her, they didn't go out to look for her. After leaving 10-mile maple forest, the butterfly first went to the central region, then the extreme north, the homeland of Western Buddha, and the southern region. After traveling through the entire inner realm, the butterfly left the inner realm. The butterfly had created too many legends in her 100 years in the inner realm. A young woman with an extremely high cultivation level and shocking saber techniques was extremely rare in the history of the 5 regions. The goddess of the saber. In just 100 years, the butterfly received this title. 100 years later, the butterfly could no longer find an opponent in the inner realm, so she went to the sky beyond heaven. In the sky beyond heaven, there were numerous stellar domains that were vast and boundless. There were countless martial Dao experts, and the strongest had already cultivated to the heavenly Dao realm. They were extremely terrifying. Hotian, Xiantian, treading celestial, mortal immortal, heavenly Dao realm, Genesis realm. There was almost no end on the path of martial arts. However, in the human world, the heavenly Dao realm was the peak. The butterfly had cultivated from Hotian to mortal immortal, and from Xiantian to heavenly Dao realm. In 1,000 years, she had lived a life that others could not live in 10,000 years. In this 1,000 years, whether it was the inner realm or the sky beyond heaven, the butterfly's brilliance was extremely dazzling. She was like a peerless genius that appeared out of thin air. No one knew her origins, but she shocked the entire human world. The butterfly had never mentioned her identity, nor did she mention her master's name. She only used the saber in her hand to carve out a bright path. In the most intense battle in the heavenly Dao realm, the butterfly faced an equally talented expert who had cultivated 1,000 years earlier than her. This battle lasted for 1,000 days. It could be said to be a true battle of 1,000 days. In 1,000 days, half of the galaxy was crippled. Finally, the butterfly used the saber in her hand to kill the enemy, completely defeating her greatest opponent in martial arts. However, after this battle, the butterfly was heavily injured and was on the verge of death. On a primitive planet, the butterfly arrived and collapsed in a pool of blood. At this moment, a white-haired woman walked over and looked at the butterfly in the pool of blood with a confused expression. Finally, the white-haired woman saved the butterfly and brought her to her residence. For 100 days, the white-haired woman took care of the butterfly meticulously. Finally, after 100 days, the butterfly woke up. Seeing the white-haired woman in front of her, a strange look flashed in her eyes. What a beautiful woman! She had seen many women in the past 1,000 years, but in terms of looks and temperament, no one could compare. "You're awake," the white-haired woman said with a smile. "Thank you for saving my life. May I know your name?" The butterfly stood up and asked softly. "I've forgotten." The white-haired woman replied with a calm expression. "You haven't recovered from your injuries. Don't move around." The butterfly looked around before looking at the woman in front of her. "Where is this?" "Zay country," the white-haired woman answered. "However, this place is very remote. It's best you don't go out with your injuries." When the butterfly heard that, she nodded gently and agreed. In the following days, the butterfly stayed in the white-haired woman's residence to recuperate. She rarely left her room. However, the butterfly would occasionally go out for a breather. She listened to the white-haired woman's warning and did not go far. Zay country was a country that no one had ever heard of. At least, the butterfly had never heard of it in her 1,000 years of life. However, the butterfly learned a few things about Zay country from the white-haired woman. Zay country was a country on the water. The entire country was filled with vast swamps with almost no land. Such a harsh environment made it impossible for humans to survive. Therefore, Zay country was not a country of humans, but a world of the Fey race. Of course, the white-haired woman was an exception. The butterfly could clearly sense that the woman who saved her was not of the Fey race. Because the white-haired woman liked to wear white clothes and her hair was white, the butterfly called her Sister White. The white-haired woman also tacitly agreed to this name. Sister White, have you never thought of leaving this place? In front of the window, the butterfly looked out at the endless swamp and asked. Chapter 1636. Zay country was a boundless and mysterious country. The entire country was surrounded by a vast lake. Without land, it was difficult for humans to survive. The cosmos was vast and humans ruled the world. However, in an unknown world, there were other races that existed other than humans. Zay country was a country ruled by the Fey race. It was rumored that in the distant Zay country's imperial city, the strongest Zay country royal family had already produced a heavenly Dao realm expert. The strongest expert was already close to the monarch realm. However, rumors were ultimately just rumors. In the era when humans ruled the cosmos, the Fey race lived in seclusion and rarely appeared in front of humans. At the borders of Zay country, on a piece of land that rose above the lake, there was a simple courtyard. In the courtyard, a white-robed, white-haired woman was quietly planting herbs in the courtyard. 10 years passed like a day. No one knew how long the white-haired woman had lived there, nor did anyone know her origins. Only the strange birds that flew in the sky witnessed the passage of time, year after year. The appearance of humans in Zay country eventually attracted the attention of the surrounding Great Fae. Over the millennia, the Great Fae of Zay country rarely appeared in the human world. However, none of the humans that accidentally entered Zay country had ever walked out alive. It was in the Fey race's nature to eat humans. During the Fey race's strongest era, they even reared humans for food. Now that the Fey race was weak, they did not dare to offend humans, but they would not let off any humans that came knocking on their door. However, the strange thing was that the white-haired woman had lived in Zay country for so many years unscathed. In the house, Butterfly, who had been recuperating for many days, propped up her weak body and walked out. When she saw the white-haired woman outside, her eyes flashed. Despite recuperating for so many days, she was unable to understand Sister Bai. Without a doubt, Sister Bai was no mortal. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live in Zay country for so long. However, up to this day, she was unable to sense any quintessential energy fluctuations from Sister Bai. In the courtyard, the white-haired woman sensed something and turned to look at Butterfly, who had walked out of the house. Her beautiful face revealed a smile as she asked, "Why are you out?" "I stayed in the house for too long, so I came out to get some fresh air." Butterfly looked at the woman in front of her and replied softly. She took a step forward and looked at the herbs in the courtyard. She asked in surprise, "Sister Bai personally planted all these?" "Yeah." The white-haired woman nodded and said, "I had nothing to do, so I found something to do." Butterfly walked forward and looked at the great herbs in the courtyard. The surprise in her eyes became more and more intense. These great medicines were all rare treasures in the world, and there were actually so many of them here. Roar! At this moment, in the distant swamp, a deafening roar rang out, shaking the area within a radius of several thousand kilometers. Hearing the commotion in the distance, Butterfly's expression froze and her body tensed up unconsciously. "Don't be nervous." The white-haired woman smiled and said, "It's fine." As the voice faded, several silhouettes appeared in the distant sky. Their auras were powerful, and all of them were surrounded by demonic chi. It was a shocking sight. However, as soon as these people appeared, before they could even get close to the small courtyard, a huge green dragon rushed out from the depths of the swamp and directly swallowed several great demons in the void into its stomach. It was a shocking scene. Before the butterfly could come back to its senses, the green flood dragon had already disappeared into the lake. At the side, the white-haired woman didn't seem to be surprised. She continued to organize the great medicines in the garden. "Sister Bai, what is that green flood dragon?" Butterfly regained her senses and asked. "I raised her." The white-haired woman smiled gently and said, "I saved her before, so I raised her here." When the butterfly heard that, she finally understood. No wonder no great demons came to disturb this place. They were probably all eaten by the green flood dragon. At the same time, in the center of Zay country, in the Valley of the Abyss, the legendary sacred ground of the demon race, the royal family of Zay country resided here. Legend had it that since ancient times, the royal family of Zay country had been guarding this place and had never left. There was even a legend that there was an extremely powerful existence in the depths of the Valley of the Abyss. It was the ancestor of all demons and was comparable to the gods and demons in the primordial era. Your Majesty, the aura of the princess has been detected. At this moment, an old voice sounded in the Valley of the Abyss. Send someone to bring the princess back. In the Valley of the Abyss, a majestic voice sounded and ordered. Yes. At the border of Zay country, under the great swamp, the green flood dragon swam around lively. On the great swamp, the white-haired woman held some great medicines in her hand and threw them into the great swamp. Below, the green flood dragon swallowed the great medicines that fell into the great swamp into its stomach and became happier. Suddenly, in the great swamp, the green flood dragon's body trembled and looked into the distance. Someone is coming. Beside the white-haired woman, Butterfly also sensed the powerful aura in the distance as she said solemnly. At the end of the boundless great swamp, golden light emanated as 3 figures descended from the sky. Their terrifying auras indicated that each of them was above the heavenly Tao realm. Your Highness, please return with us. Among the 3 figures, a young man wearing a golden crown said calmly. Under the great swamp, the green flood dragon immediately hid in the deepest depths of the great swamp when it saw the trio. Your Highness, please return with us. The young man leading the group spoke again as golden light emanated from his body and spread towards the great swamp below. In the depths of the great swamp, the green flood dragon immediately struggled violently, unwilling to submit. In the yard, Butterfly frowned when she saw this. Since she's unwilling, why are you forcing her? In the void, the young man looked at the duo as a stream of light flashed in his eyes. Humans? Humans, it's best you don't poke your nose into other people's business. The young man said indifferently as the golden light around him blazed even brighter. Butterfly's expression turned cold. Just as she was about to take action, she was stopped by the white-haired woman beside her. Ching Ching, are you going back with them? The white-haired woman looked at the green flood dragon in the depths of the great swamp and asked softly. I don't want to go back with them. The green flood dragon struggled with all its might as it replied anxiously. Upon hearing the green flood dragon's reply, the white-haired woman nodded gently. She looked at the trio in the void and said calmly, Ching Ching doesn't wish to go with you. Go back. In the void, the 3 great sages of the demon race had cold expressions. They found the naivety of the human girl beneath them laughable. In the middle, the young man with the golden crown raised his hand as a powerful force pressed down on the duo. Butterfly sensed it as her expression froze. What powerful demonic powers! Why must you be so overbearing? By the side, the white-haired woman sighed softly. She raised her slender hand and everything in the world came to a halt. The golden light that permeated the void immediately dissipated. When the young man saw this, his expression changed. Demonic aura surged around him in a domineering manner. In the world, a gigantic ancient mutated beast phantom appeared. It was massive and ferocious, sending chills down one's spine. However, in just an instant, the mutated beast phantom collapsed and dissipated. Back off. The white-haired woman waved her slender hand and the 3 great sages of the demon race were sent flying thousands of miles away. Chapter 1637. In the great swamp of the monster kingdom, 3 great saints of the monster race were about to take the monster princess away by force. For some reason, Ching Ching was extremely terrified of the 3 great saints of the monster race and struggled desperately. At the critical moment, the white-haired woman made her move and severely injured the 3 great saints of the monster race in one move. It was a shocking scene. Thousands of miles away, the 3 great saints of the monster race staggered and stabilized themselves, their faces full of shock. No one would have thought that a human woman who did not seem to have any true yuan fluctuations would have such terrifying strength. Retreat. The three great saints of the monster race did not dare to stay any longer and immediately left. On the great swamp, the white-haired woman looked at the green dragon in the depths of the great swamp and smiled. All right, Ching Ching, they are gone. Under the great swamp, the green dragon flew out and turned into a human in the void. It was a little girl who looked to be about 10 years old. She was dressed in green and had a delicate face. She was very cute and pretty. No one would have thought that the little girl was the terrifying green dragon that had devoured so many great demons. Thank you, sister. Ching Ching looked at the white-haired woman in front of her and said gratefully, "You are the princess of the monster race?" At the side, Butterfly suddenly asked. Ching Ching shifted her gaze and looked at the unfamiliar human in front of her. She curled her lips and said, "Yes." "Then why are you unwilling to go back with them?" Butterfly was puzzled. Ching Ching heard and her eyes turned red. "They killed my father. They are all bad people. There was a rebellion in the demon race. Ching Ching's father was ambushed by the current demon emperor. Before he died, he sent Ching Ching away. When I rescued Ching Ching, she was already covered in wounds," explained the white-haired woman. When Butterfly heard this, her eyes flashed with pity and she did not ask any more questions. "Ching Ching, Butterfly, pack up. We are leaving," the white-haired woman said. "Leaving?" Butterfly was surprised. "With your strength, why do you need to leave? I have caused trouble for you," Ching Ching said apologetically. "It's fine." The white-haired woman reached out and patted Ching Ching's little head. She looked at Butterfly and said, "The monster race emperor is a peak monarch expert. There are some problems with my cultivation and I am not suitable to face such an expert for the time being." Butterfly gently nodded her head when she heard this. So that was the case. Could it be that she had always felt that there was something wrong with Sister Bai's cultivation? Since they'd made their decision, the three of them didn't delay any longer. They packed up their things and left. Ching Ching transformed into a green serpent and swallowed the herb garden in the courtyard. Chapter 1638. In the Great Lake, Qi Lin had appeared to capture Ching Ching personally. At the critical moment, Butterfly made her move. Butterfly buries flowers and cleaves the heavens. The peerless blade cleaved apart the heavens and earth. In the air, Qi Lin's eyes flashed with a strange light as interest appeared on his handsome but cold face for the first time. It was indeed exciting to meet such an expert right after coming out. Jilin raised his hand, using his flesh to block the sharp edge of the blade. Boom! An earth-shattering tremor resounded. The blade that could cleave the heavens was blocked by the fiend race anomaly's body. Butterfly's expression froze. This was the first time she had met such a terrifying opponent since leaving 10-Mile Maple Forest. In the small courtyard, the white-haired woman looked at the butterfly in front of her as a dazed look appeared on her beautiful face. She felt that Butterfly's blade technique was familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. But she couldn't recall where. In the air, Butterfly fought Qi Lin. The blade light illuminated the heavens and earth. Butterfly's cultivation was in the heavenly Tao realm, but she still couldn't gain the upper hand against Qi Lin. The pressure of cultivation was difficult to overcome. Even a genius like Butterfly couldn't overcome the gap of time. Boom! After 10 moves, Qi Lin used his finger to block the tip of Yen Su's saber. Around the two of them, their clothes fluttered in the wind, and the air currents surged. The fiend race anomaly had nearly caused the extinction of the fiend race. He was the most terrifying existence among the fiend race. Even the previous fiend emperor was wary of him. Now that Qi Lin had appeared again, it was a disaster for both the fiend race and Butterfly. No wonder those fiend race idiots kept failing. "You're not bad, human." Qi Lin blocked Butterfly's blade with a wave of his hand. He gathered energy in his palm and struck out with an earth-shattering force. Seeing this, Hudi's expression darkened. Unable to dodge, she gripped her saber with both hands and pushed her martial arts to the limit. She slashed her saber down to block the shocking palm. Boom! A deafening sound of collision rang out. The yen saber cut open the palm power, but the remaining power was still hard to block. The butterfly took the shock of the palm power and flew out 1,000 feet away. The corners of her mouth were stained red. The difference in cultivation was difficult to make up for. After 10 moves, Butterfly's defeat was obvious. One more palm, Yellow Springs. Not wanting to show any mercy, Jilin King's body reappeared with blood-red light. Murky undercurrents surged violently as a terrifying power erupted, ready to kill his opponent. The butterfly focused and took a step forward. Butterfly shadows appeared around them again. If one looked closely, they would see thousands of blade lights rising up. It was a shocking sight. The two moves were about to clash, and the outcome of the collision would be decided. At this moment, the white-clothed woman standing quietly in the small courtyard below had disappeared without a trace. Above the void, a blood-red light filled the air as the Qi Lin extreme technique was unleashed. Boom! At this moment, a white-haired woman appeared out of thin air in front of the butterfly. She raised her slender hand and blocked the apocalyptic demonic Qi. A violent shockwave shook the air, and the bloody light that filled the sky gradually dissipated. Within the bloody light, two figures appeared, and they were actually evenly matched. A look of surprise flashed across Jilin's face, but it quickly returned to normal. It turned out that this human girl was the real master. In front, the white-haired woman looked back at Butterfly behind her and said softly, "Butterfly, leave this person to me. You rest for a while." Butterfly nodded. She did not persist and descended from the sky. In the 10 years in the 10-mile maple forest, Butterfly had learned many things. However, the most important thing in the Knowing Destiny sect was to protect one's life. Even if one knew that it was impossible, one would persist when necessary and be a fool when not necessary. Butterfly was not a fool, so she retreated when necessary. Above the void, the white-haired woman looked at the beast race in front of her. She did not say anything and directly rushed out. Her speed was unbelievably fast. Jilin's pupils constricted, and he subconsciously raised his arm to block. Boom! A violent collision sounded, and Jilin's body was pushed back several feet. The corner of his mouth was red. What a shocking result! Jilin's eyes flashed with shock. In that instant, he did not notice it at all. In the void, the white-haired woman stood quietly. There was no fluctuation of true qi around her, as if she was immortal. However, only Jilin, who had fought her personally, knew how terrifying she was. That palm just now was only the power of her physical body, but it was enough to put him at a disadvantage. World-burning evil flame. The situation was unfavorable. Jilin flipped his palms, and the evil flame soared into the sky. A terrifying demonic aura swept out, causing people to shudder. The beast race was a monarch, and his strength was terrifying. For countless years, he was considered a taboo by the beast race, and had been sealed at the bottom of the abyss. Now that Jilin had appeared, he displayed the most terrifying evil energy. Scarlet flames filled the air, forming a sky-burning terror. It was an indescribable scene. Flames surged in the sky above the great swamp, covering the sky and the sun. In the void, the white-haired woman stood quietly in the midst of the evil flame. Her expression did not change at all. The world-burning evil flame was shocking. With the support of the evil flame, Jilin's body emitted a demonic red light, causing people to feel fear.